All right, what's good? Drive time, Friday afternoon, about 14 minutes past the hour of 2 o'clock. The sun is shining. We got smoked with snow earlier this morning, and it looked like it was going to snow all day, but it is sunny, and it has settled into quite a lovely day here in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah, at our Broadway Media Studios. And as it is every single day, it is great to have you with us. Good to have you along for the ride. Spence Checketts behind the mic. That is Porter Larson behind the glass. We have a lot to get to on the program today. The Utah Jazz are back in action tonight. They're going to take on the Phoenix Suns. Feels like it's been a long time since the Jazz played because, you know, it has. The Emirates Cup rolls along. How excited are you guys for that? LeBron James has decided to just, bounce for a while. Apparently, a lot of really weird rumors surrounding LeBron James right now, but we'll do a little pro basketball on the program today. Get you ready for the Jazz game tonight. NFL Week 15 got rolling last night. And look, I was expecting a much higher scoring game. So was Vegas. I think the over-under was 49. The Rams got it done, though, 12-6. And they did what they needed to do as the Rams march on potentially to the postseason. Of course, they still have work to do themselves. And the 49ers are all but eliminated. They need a miracle. And oddly enough, that locker room feels like it's coming apart a little bit after a situation last night where Devondre Campbell was asked to go into the football game, and he politely declined. And Kyle Shanahan not happy about that. Looks like Devondre Campbell is going to be released at some point. I feel like that news is imminent. His teammates, including George Kittle, very unhappy, as you would be in a must-win situation after the chaos that happened last night. But we have a lot of really, really good NFL games on the slate for Week 15, maybe your fantasy football playoffs on the line. So we'll do some pro football on the show today. Get you ready for a big weekend, including the Bills and the Lions, the Steelers and the Eagles. We've got Packers-Seahawks, got a double dip on Monday night, the Bears and the Vikings, the Falcons and the Raiders. Unfortunately, not a great Monday night slate, but a lot to do on the program today. The latest on the transfer portal for the University of Utah, for BYU and all of college football. College football awards last night. Travis Hunter had himself quite a night, as you would expect. Bowl season on the way, CFP on the way. There's still plenty of college football to talk about, and the transfer portal leaves us with a ton of storylines to get to on the show. So, a lot to do. Good guest list. Scott Mitchell, one of the best to ever do it at the University of Utah from the quarterback standpoint, will stop by today. It's been a while since Scott joined the program. He's been traveling, but we'll get his take on the quarterback situation at the U, what he thinks is going to look like next year. Coach Witt back for year 21. Jason Beck now your new offensive coordinator, so we'll get Scott's take on all of that. On the program today, Kyle Bonagura for more college football, one of my favorites, covers college football for ESPN. The hippest basketball writer out there, Howard Beck from The Ringer. Our celebrity NBA reporter, Dave McMenamin, good enough to carve out some time. Then our Friday staple, Christopher Camarani, on the show. Scott Mitchell, Kyle Bonagura, Howard Beck, Dave McMenamin, Chris Camarani. That's a hell of a radio show for 4 hours this Friday afternoon. Happy Friday to you. Congratulations. You made it. Weekend time. Take a big old deep breath. Chaos of the holidays, chaos at work, chaos in the household, whatever it is Friday, so you should be in a good mood. Happy Friday. Scott Mitchell, Kyle Bonagura, Howard Beck, Dave McMenamin, Chris Camarani, me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners, and that guy, Porter Larson. Are you innately in a better mood on Fridays? Do you get the serotonin spike from a Friday? That's a no.
It's a good question. I guess so. It depends on the Friday. I would say more Saturdays for me. Not that Fridays aren't fun, but we usually do work on Saturdays. So that kind of is the dopamine you're speaking of. It's just like 12 hours delayed. Once the football's done, once we can turn over to the weekend. But I don't know. I'm not feeling like doing it today, so I'm just going to let you do the show. Is that cool?
Well, I usually host the show.
Like all of it.
Wait, I can't even go.
I don't want to play today.
Wow. You're taking your ball and you're going home?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe halftime. Maybe I'll go until like halfway through and then set you loose.
Luckily, I have a lot of guests, so maybe we don't even need you today.
I was going to say, you're pretty loaded up.
I am pretty loaded up, just as far as guests go. Otherwise, I'm clear-eyed, ready to go on Friday.
Sober.
Oh, yeah, always on air, and mostly off air, too. Anyway, that's not a topic we need to get to on a Friday. Our first guest right out of the gates will be Scott Mitchell. Before we get to Scott, though, Courtesy of our good friends and your good friends too. It's Standard Restaurant Supply. Standard Restaurant Supply, your one-stop shop for all your tailgating needs. Check them out either online or their great location here in Salt Lake. It is time now for your opening tip. So there's still plenty of really exciting college football to talk about. Now, unfortunately for Utah, none of that involves games. It involves the ever-changing roster, the ever-changing coaching staff, as we wait to kind of see how this stuff is going to fill out a little bit. There are plenty of holes still to be filled. And good news, bad news via transfer portal, as we've talked about. It does feel like the starting quarterback is locked in Devin Dampier. I'm not sure if it was a package deal with Devin and Jason Beck. It kind of feels like it was, and it feels like it is, and that's definitely not a bad thing. A couple of other coaching hires have gone down. And so we'll kind of get to, throughout the course of the show, what we know and what we're hoping to see move forward. Now, as we've discussed on the show, and Lane Kiffin with some very poignant remarks as far as the timing of this stuff. I mean, there are still certainly 12 teams very focused on games ahead with the expanded 12-team CFP, and then a bevy of others who are getting ready for bowl games. And, you know, we've heard Deion Sanders say that all of his players are going to play. I think Kalani has echoed that sentiment. I am intrigued by the Alamo Bowl this year. I do think BYU Colorado is a really exciting bowl game, but obviously it's the CFP bracket, the CFP situation that we're all focused on. And there's so much talent on the remaining teams that if you're a Utah fan, you may have to wait for a number of weeks until we actually have clarity on what the roster is going to look like, because certainly there are a ton of holes. Now, as I talk about often, just because you're in the transfer portal doesn't mean you're leaving. We've seen it here. We've seen it elsewhere where players just go kick the tires to see how much money they can make. And ultimately, there's still plenty of people that believe the University of Utah would really like to have Isaac Wilson back in that quarterback room to compete with Devin Dampier for the starting job. Now, what do you do, though, if you're Isaac? Because last year, and I can't corroborate this, but people report on the portal, and that's kind of their bread and butter, and it's kind of all they do, reported that multiple quarterback options elected to say no to the University of Utah as a result of Cameron Rising being back under center. And Coach Witt made he made it very, very clear, as did Andy Ludwig last year, that their starting quarterback was on the roster, and it was Cam Rising. So did that dissuade top-tier prospects from being a part of that quarterback room? Can't corroborate it, but that was kind of the storyline, the narrative. And so if Jason Beck has essentially handpicked the quarterback he had at New Mexico to start for him next year, is that information being known to quarterbacks? What does that mean for Isaac, who still, in my opinion, could land somewhere in a good situation with a good coaching staff and sit behind a really good starter for a couple of years maybe, and then take over that job and kill it? I mean, he has that talent. There's no doubt about it. But if you're Isaac Wilson, are you okay with sitting behind Devin Dampier for a year or two? Because ultimately, I have to believe that was the plan all along, right? I don't think it's a hot take to believe that Isaac was supposed to sit behind Cameron for at least a year, if not two. And, because he was the backup, the number one preferred backup, maybe it was just a one-year plan, contingency plan, and then it was going to be Isaac's job this year. But I do think it's fair to have the conversation about whether or not Isaac showed enough last year to believe that he could even compete with Devin Dampier for the starting quarterback job for the U. I mean, I think it's only fair to say that the results were very mixed. And I continued on this show every single week to really hesitate to place the blame at his feet. 18-year-old true freshman who enrolled last April, at one point, a year prior to, just a few months, I should say, prior to enrolling at the U, he was trying to figure out Farmington secondary, and then they asked him to figure out Big 12 secondaries. That's a tough thing to do right away. 10 touchdowns, 11 picks. His QBR was 117.7. Little bit of success on the ground, not a ton. I mean, Isaac is one of those guys who can run if you need to, but it's not necessarily his strength. But ultimately, you got to have depth in that room, as we've talked about, not just one, potentially two, even three players as of right now, if you look at the depth chart, there's one quarterback in that room. So there's some other transfer portal news, But Porter, I know you don't want to participate today, but get out of your doldrums and stop sulking and give us your take on the 2 new coaching hires that came down yesterday right after we signed off air.
Yeah, man. Well, obviously, Utah hires a running backs coach, a wide receivers coach, and a couple of guys that have really, really good ties around the West, and ties in Utah as well. So that's, I think, the point here is, they're going after guys that are kind of in the historic recruiting footprint, because you already have guys like Morgan Scalley, other fellas that are recruiting that heavy Big 12 Texas footprint as well. But yeah, you replace Alvis Whitted, you replace Quinton Ganther. And we can go back to that as well. The performance of the running backs over the last couple of years has been, I think, pretty good. But there has been a letdown in recruiting. There's been a letdown in keeping guys in the room. With Quinton Ganther, you saw good production, but not great, I don't know, running back room management, right? You saw the Tavion Thomas stuff. You had Jalen Glover transfer. There was a lot to be desired in that part of the game. And, yeah, man, I think that Utah is looking in that direction, looking for guys not only that are personable on and off the field, but also, have a wealth of experience around the West. And from what I understand, they're really close to rounding out that staff. I think there will be 1 or 2 more analysts named before we get into the bulk of the offseason. But at this point, you can kind of look at the staff is pretty fully shapen.
Mark Atuaya has been hired. He knows Coach Beck as the running backs coach. Micah Simon has been hired as the wide receivers coach. And Mark tweeted out that he's elated and blessed. Real quick before we break, if you're a Utah coach, are you contractually obligated to use the term elated more than most people do?
You might be.
Okay.
Kyle likes the word elated.
Kyle is elated to say elated.
But yeah, Mark Atuaya, and he's kind of got some familial connections, BYU stuff. He's related to the Asiatas, so there's a lot here. But yeah, he's elated to be here, and I think that Utah fans should be pretty excited to have him. He's one of those coaches that is really high energy. It's not just that tweet. You see him on the sidelines. You see him away from the field. He's that way as well.
And I'm elated to be doing the show today on a Friday.
You know what? I am too.
All right, good. Oh, wait.
I'll concede to that. I'm elated to be doing sports radio today.
Okay, he's back. Look at that. And we're elated to have you guys with us. We'll catch a quick break, but more Utah football comes around the other side. Have not talked to Scott Mitchell since Jason Beck was hired, since Devin Dampier transferred in, and a number of players transferred out. So some Utah football with Scott coming up next on a Friday right here on ESPN 700. Rear Delt Fly Day. You know what Rear Delt Fly Day means around here. It means there's going to be a musical theme. Admission, on-air admission. If you saw my workout playlist, it's embarrassing. It is full of like cheesy pop music from the 80s and 90s and like Rage Against the Machine.
Okay. I mean,
just crushing the rear delts though today.
Whatever you gotta use to motivate yourself, I think is doable. It's fine.
Well, and plus we play the same Grateful Dead song for Kyle Bonagura as we have for years, so we're mixing it up. But on a Friday, batting leadoff, the great Kyle Bonagura. Kyle, happy Friday, sir. How are you?
I'm doing good, Spence. Although I'm a little bit disappointed by the change in music choice. I'm not going to lie about that.
Our bad. Back to the Dead next Friday. My bad, Kyle. Hey, since you and I last spoke, a lot of news is broken around here, namely that for the 21st season, Kyle Whittingham will be back on the sidelines for his Utah Utes. Kyle, what's your reaction to Coach Whitt coming back?
Yeah, I mean, as far as being like surprised or not, like not really. Like I never got the sense all year that like just the way he was framing decisions that he was making indicated that like he was at the end, right? It was a lot of forward facing stuff. You know, that didn't necessarily mean it was going to play out the way it has, but shaped my mindset a little bit. And so it wasn't necessarily a surprise. And then just like from a like personal enjoyment standpoint, like I'm happy about it. I think that it would have been just kind of a weird way for him to go out to have, you know, this season play out the way it did, and then last season was a disappointment as well. So, like, I think he's kind of earned to go out on his own terms, right? And I don't think there was anything about what happened in the last 2 years, really, that is so much on him, right? It's a lot of bad luck with injuries and stuff like that. So, I think I'd like to see him kind of have a chance to right the ship a little bit before he goes out into the sunset.
I wonder if you could shed a little light, because we kind of sometimes around here, you know the deal, you do a lot of hits on local radio stations, and when you're a local radio station and a local sports talk radio host, you tend to lean into the local reaction. And Kyle, there are more people than I expected who met this news with kind of like oh, here we go again. And it feels like, Kyle, you know, as far as if we get out of our little blinders here in the market, is as well respected as any head coach in college football nationally. So if you could shed some light on what the national perspective is on who Coach Whitt is as a college football coach.
No, I think that's right. I mean, I think respect is a word that kind of fits with him nationally. When you're able to win at a high level over 20 years, right, and doing it in different leagues and be able to adapt with the times, there's few coaches in the sport, you know, really over in this generation who have won in so many different ways in so many different spots. He's always been able to evolve the program to wherever, you know, how kind of the sport and, you know, has bobbed and weaved, right? The obviously the program, switching leagues, all those things. So I think there's a lot of respect that comes with that. And, you know, the way he just handles himself it's very businesslike, right? It's not, he doesn't make it about himself. He just kind of, you know, it's very cliche, but I think it kind of fits here. It's like he does it the right way, and I say that with kind of air quotes, but it's true, right? He's very much about football. He's very much about the players, and I think the bottom line here is he's won at a high level, right? And when you win at a high level for a long period of time, I think you earn the benefit of the doubt, and that's why, you know, even though the last 2 years haven't played out like Ute fans would have liked, I don't think he's necessarily like deserves like a lion's share of the blame here. Like a lot of the reasons for their, you know, lack of success at a high level are because of injuries and things that you can't really control. And if it was other reasons that you can place the majority of the blame on, I think the conversation would be different, but that's where we're at. And, you know, when you don't have a vested interest in the team's success week in, week out, I think it shapes your perspective a little bit differently. Did
you watch Succession, Kyle?
I did, and I'm not, you know, I wasn't super into it. Like I kind of could have checked out at times during episodes, but I think I'm up to speed for the most part.
It's a simple analogy because there's a little bit of a Coach Whitt is Logan Roy and Morgan Scalley is Kendall, and every time the succession plan feels like it's ready to go, Coach Whitt decides he wants to come back. Like Logan kept doing the same thing to his son Kendall, and there are, you know, it's an easy one. It's an easy succession parallel there. And there are plenty of people who I've heard from, and I every time I bring this up, I want to make my opinion clear. I think Kyle has earned the right to tell us when he's done. I believe that because I'm old enough to remember when 6 wins, a bowl game, and maybe competitive with BYU is a massive win for Utah football. And Coach Witt, along with Ron McBride and Urban Meyer and others, changed the expectations around here. But millennial Ute fans, I don't know, man, go vape and stream on Twitch or whatever. Like, they just want a change as soon as possible. And so if you're Morgan Scalley, based off of your knowledge of the sport, do you think there's any uncomfortable, like, hey, when is this going to be my show type of thing?
I mean, maybe, but I don't necessarily know if he really has earned that, right? I mean, he's been at Utah for so long. Kyle helped bring him along in his career. He stuck with him through some times that were not particularly a positive for him as far as his reputation goes, right? And so, if he had another offer to go somewhere and be the head coach like that, we've seen that happen before, where head coaches in waiting have left to go take other jobs before their time came. And so if he was so important for him, he could have been, maybe he is I don't think so, but he could pursue other opportunities, even though you had to have that head coach in waiting title, if that was the most important thing. But the part where people who want the change now, where it loses me, is just because you're going to have a change of head coach doesn't mean all of a sudden this is going to be a completely different program, right? For the most part, things are going to stay status quo. I think that's why you have a head coach in waiting in the first place, is because you want the continuity that comes with that, right? So you're not going to see a lot of wholesale changes by going from Kyle to Morgan. That's the whole point of why they set it up the way they have. And I'm sure Kyle was influential in allowing that alignment to take place, right? And so you'll see some differences next year. Another new offensive coordinator. That's kind of the way things go in Utah, right? That's not a new deal. But as far as the head coach change for me, it doesn't mean that you're going to be better off if Morgan Scalley is the head coach. If anything, you could take a step back even further if that's the case. Change doesn't guarantee any sort of positive momentum.
And to further your point, they just replaced the OC, and if Morgan took over as the head coach, they'd be bringing in a new defensive coordinator, so essentially a brand new staff. So I get it, I understand it, and think it's the right move. But since you brought up the offensive coordinator, Jason Beck was the hire after a report surfaced that they were flirting with a couple of other candidates. One went to Oklahoma. The other went to Texas Tech. I don't know if Jason was the third choice. I don't have any inside info, but those are the reports. And New Mexico, the fourth best offense in yards per game a year ago. And Jason brings his quarterback, Devin Dampier, with him. Devin was the number 7 ranked quarterback in the portal, which is pretty good for a team like the University of Utah. Now, we have seen this in the past with the Jake Bentleys of the world and such. So I just wondered what your take is as of now with the new offensive coordinator being Jason Beck, and he's bringing his quarterback with him.
So I think that's the key, right? That he's bringing his quarterback with him, because what that essentially means, right, is you have a returning starter at quarterback within the offense, and we've seen that play out successfully a lot over the past few years. And I think that's a trend that's not going to stop. It's a pretty easy way to kind of bridge the gap between, when you're making a QB change and installing a new offense. Cam Ward's the most obvious example at Washington State. When he moved up there, it was a pretty seamless transition. Caleb Williams wins a Heisman Trophy doing that with Lincoln Riley as his head coach. So I think that's really helpful. But again, look, he was, it's the Mountain West on an average team, right? The offense was good, but you're not doing it in a league where you're facing the same standard, right, as you will in the Big 12. And so I think it gives you a really good chance to be successful. I think it's about as good as a transition as you could have hoped for. But again, nothing is guaranteed here. So I think it gives you a chance to speed up the process, right? What's interesting now about college football is every team is essentially starting over every year, right? And so there's still going to be a lot of movement in the portal. We'll see where things kind of land when this transfer window's over. And then there's we'll see what happens in the spring and kind of and even after all of that is done, we know that preseason predictions don't mean anything as the Utes proved this year.
So one more follow-up before we move on, because you referenced Devin, in the Mountain West, and, the team was average, but the offense wasn't. They couldn't stop anybody. So any trepidation for Ute fans as far as the skill set transferring from G5 to P4? Do you feel like that's a transition Devin can make?
Yeah, no, I think so. I mean, look, I haven't watched a lot of New Mexico football this year, but I think the numbers are the numbers, right? I used Ward as the example before. I mean, he made the jump from FCS to Washington State when the Pac-12 was a really good league, and it was fine, right? And so I don't think it's about I don't think the jump from the Mountain West to the Big 12 is insurmountable. Like it is an adjustment, but there's enough examples now in college football where we've seen plenty of guys make that jump and even get better, right? And so it's part of it, but it's nothing that's gonna, it's not certainly not something he can't overcome. And then I think the fact that that they're bringing him with them, shows that there's confidence that he can make that level and compete at a high level in the Big 12.
For sure. All right. BYU, it's funny, Kyle. I've been talking about this. Both Utah and BYU blew it in different ways. Utah was the preseason favorite, never really got it going. BYU installed themselves as the favorite after winning 9 straight and then blew it down the stretch. But their reward, and I'll say reward because I do think BYU, Colorado, Alamo Bowl, San Antonio, December the 28th, certainly from a local standpoint, it's the one bowl that we have here, so it's of interest. But when you compare it to a lot of the other matchups, in my opinion, it is one of the better games. And, of course, Deion's going to bring a lot of eyes. And Deion said via a Zoom press conference situation that all of his players were playing. Kalani has kind of echoed the sentiment. So what do you make of BYU, Colorado, in the Alamo Bowl?
It might be the best bowl outside the playoff.
Yeah.
Just as far as games that I'm looking forward to. And I think that the Colorado players are playing is a big part of that, right? If Shedeur and Travis Hunter weren't playing, Travis is going to win the Heisman on Saturday. If those guys weren't playing, it would have been a lot different, right? But the fact that they are makes it that much more intriguing. It's weird. It's a little bizarre, right? You have conference opponents playing in the bowl game, just with the way the old Pac-12 ties made this work. But I think in this case, it works out pretty well because they didn't play during the regular season. It also provides a little bit more clarity about who the best team in the Big 12 would have been. I mean, you had a four team tie for first place, right? And those are the teams that got shut out of the title game despite having the same record. So they're both feeling a little aggrieved, right? Probably just unlucky that the tiebreakers broke the way they did and they didn't get a chance to go win it. Are better football teams than SMU. Like you can make that case, but you can make the reverse case and rely on just as much logic to get the argument across the line. And that's just going to be the way it is every year when you're talking about that 7th at large spot. There's never going to be a team that can't blame themselves if they don't get in. And I think that's what's so good about this format compared to the 4-team. I mean, you're never going to see a situation again where you have a 13-0 Florida State team that gets left out, right? I think that problem has been solved, and now there's always going to be a discussion about who should or who should not have gotten that last spot. But when you get down to that spot with Alabama with 3 losses or SMU with no really impressive wins, Miami, kind of in that same. I don't really care. Like you have there's no sympathy for me if you get left out at that point. The one critique I have, and I've been pretty consistent about this all year, is I don't like the way the seeding works with the two, with the 4 conference champions getting a bye. The whole point of seeding a tournament is to reward the teams at the top, and this does not do that. Oregon does not get a good draw because it is as the number 1 seed. In this format, you'd much rather be the 3 seed. You'd much rather be Boise State playing the winner of Penn State SMU than if you're Oregon and you get, who was it off the top of my head? It's Tennessee,
Ohio State potentially, yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So there's things to work on there, right? Where I think you could, if you want to give those teams a bye, if you want to give them the 4 highest or the 5 highest ranked champions, you get that in, cool with that. I'm even cool with buys to the quarterfinals for the top 4, but I think once you get to the quarterfinals, there's a really easy solution. We might have talked about this before, but just reseed it. Whatever the remaining 8 teams are at that point, reseed it. Have the 1 seed play whoever the lowest ranked team is left, and seed it as follows. I think that solves that pretty easily and rewards the teams at the top. Also rewards the champions and rewards multiple leagues with buys. And so I think in that situation, everybody wins.
Do you think as a result of some of the, Bama being left out, Ole Miss or whatever, that the SEC and the Big Ten will expedite their process to kind of separate themselves from everybody else, or is that even possible? You just hear a lot of wailing and gnashing of teeth down south right now.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think, like, I think they're going to proceed in that direction because of the money, like, regardless. This doesn't help, right? This is part of the conversation. But again, I don't think Alabama lost 3 games this year, and it's not a travesty that they got left out, right? Like, there shouldn't be wholesale changes to the sport because, Alabama, which got, didn't score a touchdown against Oklahoma and lost to Vanderbilt, got left out of a 12-team playoff, right? And I think ultimately, like, cooler heads will prevail when it comes to like that. I don't think. I mean, you're hearing SEC homers and advocates go to bat for Alabama, which is completely normal. Like, that's just how the sport works. But I don't think, like, this example is going to have some sort of meaningful impact on, like, the structure of the sport, expedite any sort of, like, further separation between the two. Now, I think that's coming regardless, but I just don't think this example is going to have much of an impact there.
While we're in this space, we had Matt Brown on, and Matt writes the college football newsletter Extra Points, and he does a really good job of leaning into the business side of collegiate athletics and the off-field stuff. And Matt was one of the earliest media members, college football writers that I had on the show that outlined pretty articulately why this sport had to move towards a pro model rapidly. And I just believe it does, because the problems that are plaguing football right now could be solved with moving towards that model. And, athletic directors seem to be for it. Coaches seem to be for it. You can sign contracts. Players have to stick around for 2 to 3 years or whatever that looks like. University presidents, according to what I've read, are adamantly against it because they do not want these young men being employees of the institution. And Matt, when he joined us last week for the first time, said he's not sure if the pro model is where they're going to land. And look, Matt got into labor laws and the Trump presidency, and that's not my space. So I'll let Matt do that on his newsletter and, all the things that could get in the way of actually forming a union and collectively bargaining with a governing body if you're the players. But are you still of the belief and the mindset that college football is high speed ahead to a pro model?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how you want to define pro model, right? Because there's like a lot of the sport is certainly headed that way with the way you manage your roster and just the fact that these kids are getting paid and a lot of that, right? But I think what you're always going to see with college sports is they're going to evolve towards the path of least resistance, right? Whatever the easiest way for these athletic directors and conference commissioners to continue to earn a paycheck without having to make hard decisions is ultimately what's going to happen. And if that means moving to a pro model, if they're forced into certain decisions by some of these federal lawsuits, like, they're going to comply because they have to, but they're going to do the least amount of work as possible to continue to collect their paychecks. And I think it's really that simple. But yeah, with as far as like how roster rules, I'm with you. Like, that's not my specialty either. Like, collective bargaining and unions and those sorts of things. I think with so much money involved, I think we're lying to ourselves if we're going to continue to, quote, call these amateur sports. It's not. You have billion-dollar TV contracts. College football is popular than most. It's more popular than baseball. It's like right there with the NFL. The television ratings for college football are unbelievable. It would be one of the most popular sports to watch in the world as far as TV audiences are concerned, right? So, like, it is pro sports, and you've got 150 years of amateurism behind it. It's bizarre, globally, that it was born out of an academic system, but, like, here we are, right? And the money is just too much to pretend like these are not professional athletes. And so we're going to continue to see small incremental shifts in that direction with administrators doing as little work as possible.
Same, by the way. Before I set you loose, Bill Belichick to Carolina. Is this just simply Bill Belichick could not find an open door in pro football? Is this the beginning of member institutions and athletic departments maybe looking to the pros because of the aforementioned pro model? And could we see more Michael Lombardi's as GMs and Bill Belichick's as coaches in college football?
Yeah, I mean, I think you could. It makes sense structurally to have people who are familiar with managing a roster that way. building a roster in that way. Like, you're not signing 25 guys and developing it, or that system is completely dead. It's always going to be about reloading through the portal for the most part. You're going to supplement it with some younger guys, some high talented, or some really talented guys coming out of high school. But that's the way of doing things is completely dead. It is more similar to the NFL. So there's a lot more value in bringing in people who have worked in that way. Belichick's a little bit is a big outlier, right? You have the most successful coach in the history of the sport, and if he wants to coach your team, yeah, I think you make exceptions for people, even if they're 72 years old, when they have the resume that he has. I mean, obviously he's going to surround himself with people who help him kind of, deal with the transition in the part of the game that he's not familiar with. He's a smart enough guy. He's a successful enough coach to know that there's stuff about this level that he's not an expert in and will need some help. The age thing is a little weird, but I think there is a gravitas there with someone with that sort of name that's going to help land players. I think it's very different than Deion Sanders. I want to be very clear about that, but it's similar in that, like, you have like a legitimate football celebrity now, and there's just a degree of intrigue that comes with people like that is going to appeal to talented people. He's got a good story to sell, right? If you're, hey, I can get you to the NFL. Well, how do you know? Well, Google me, right? Signetti talked about Googling him, and he's talking about like winning football games at JMU. You Google Bill Belichick, and you see literally the most successful coach in the history of the sport. So I have no idea. I have no expectations about how he'll do there, but I don't think you can write off the possibility that he'll be really successful, and I'm really interested to see how it plays out.
For sure. Kyle, thanks for the time, man. Happy Friday. Have a great weekend. We'll chat soon.
Sounds good. See you.
All right, Kyle Bonagura covers college football for ESPN. Appreciate his time today. Brought to you by Big O Tires. 'Tis the season for savings at Big O Tires, the team you trust. Save up to $200 after mail-in rebates on select sets of tires, or get up to $1,000. Excuse me. Let's be clear here. Let me start over. 'Tis the season for savings at Big O Tires, the team you trust. Save up to $200 after mail-in rebates on select sets of tires, or get up to $100. Instant savings on select sets now through December the 31st. Get our brand new Tip Top Healthy Car Special for $99.95, which includes a full synthetic oil change, wiper blade replacements, and more. Stop in or schedule an appointment online to see how we can help you with your tire and service needs. We know tires and service can be an unexpected expense, so Big O Tires wants to make sure you have financing options to keep your vehicle in tip-top shape. No credit needed financing options to fit any budget and any situation. Big O Tires has over 50 locally owned and operated locations in Utah. Schedule an appointment over the phone or visit bigotires.com to find a location near you. What are we doing coming up next? You're the producer of the show. I know you're sulking today, but what's coming up next?
Good question. Scott Mitchell might be leaving us hanging.
Coming up next, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Because that's what we do on a Friday right here on ESPN 700. Is this Fred Durst on the radio program today? Is that what I'm hearing? Is this Fred Durst?
Of course.
So this must mean, so Scott Mitchell was supposed to join us this segment, but if you're playing Limp Bizkit.
Oh, no, this is Scott Mitchell. It's his walk-up song.
This is Scott Mitchell's walk-up song. So, okay, a couple things here. Tell Scott Mitchell he's dead to me, please. Will you please pass that message along? No, I'm serious. Tell him
right now.
Say you are dead to Spence.
Spence says you're dead to him.
Tell him he's going to be sleeping with the fishes. There's going to be a horse's head in his bed when he wakes up.
You better be careful.
No, what?
That's a big guy.
I ain't afraid.
He's
harder they fall.
That's
Everyone
true.
has a plan until they get punched in the face. Scott is a big guy. Our next, you know what? I'm not. That's cheap. That's cheap, and I'm bigger than that. Okay, I'm not going to do that to our guy.
It's fair. I did it enough last week.
Because we love our guy. We love our guy. We're going to get back to some college football, but there is a little RSL news. The CONCACAF Champions Cup, or whatever the hell they're calling it. The draw took place. They signed a new player. The historian, the unofficial historian, the Wikipedia, WikiTray, senior VP. What's your title these days? I always lose track.
Yeah, VP of Communications, but I've answered to pretty much anything.
Yeah, but don't be pretentious now that you're a VP. Nobody wants to hear that.
It's not a new thing, just to you, I guess.
Trey Fitzgerald is our guest on a Friday. I kid because we love him. Happy Friday, buddy. How we doing?
Happy Friday. That is the best intro song I could have ever imagined. That's Behind Blue Eyes. What a great Limp Bizkit track.
Don't know what the name is, and don't say that it's great. But I probably shouldn't give you too much of a hard time because, as you admitted, Limp Bizkit got you through your second divorce.
The first, not the second.
Oh, what? Which horrible pop artist got you through your second divorce?
Rihanna, not horrible.
All right. Limp Bizkit gets him through his first. Rihanna gets him through his second. Any prediction as far as what will get you through your third?
There won't be a third, man.
I don't know, man. I don't know. And look, I can't talk, but let's move on from it quickly before we get ourselves in trouble. All right, fill us in. It was, and look, I didn't know much about the CONCACAF stuff until our first experience back in the day, 2009, 10, or whatever. And when I experienced it, I'm like, this is a really cool tournament. So I'm excited that RSL is back in CONCACAF. What do we know? What do we need to know about the draw?
Yeah, honestly, Spence, this has been rejuvenating. Obviously, disappointing end of the season with the penalty kick shootout losses against Minnesota. You kind of go into a dark time when you take your foot off the gas. But you gain perspective, and we did have a very successful 2024 season with the points and the goals and the home wins. But I think the tangible success piece is earning a CONCACAF berth and getting back into continental competition for the first time in 8 years. So we had the draw on Tuesday, and Real Salt Lake is matched up with a Costa Rican club named Herediano, and we will play down there in Costa Rica against Herediano on February 19th, and then they turn around and come back and play up here at America First Field in Sandy on February 26th. And we are so excited to be back in that competition. We're able to get out of those two legs against Herediano. We'll go and play a two-leg series in the round of 16 against LA Galaxy that just won MLS Cup last Saturday. So now the pieces are kind of starting to fall into place, and we can plan for next year.
Didn't you tell me at one point the Galaxy were too soft to win MLS Cup this year?
I did. It shows how little I know what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Interesting.
You know what? Yeah, they were harder without Ricky Pooch on the field, and that's why they won MLS Cup. They were not soft anymore.
Just their best player. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Fair enough. All right, if we expand our horizons and RSL goes and potentially either wins this tournament or shows very well, what are the benefits for the club should they make a good run in CONCACAF?
Yeah, first and foremost, money. You get hundreds of thousands of dollars for playing in and then advancing from each round. You win CONCACAF Champions Cup, you get $5 million on top of that, and then you get a berth in both the Club World Cup for FIFA and then a new tournament called the FIFA Intercontinental Cup. I don't know exactly what that means and what that is, but hey, to get into two tournaments where you're potentially playing against Manchester United or Real Madrid with trophies and money on the line, that's pretty cool.
Speaking of MLS Cup, and I know I'm going to get the Trey spin on this, and that's fine, but according to Sports Business Journal, the linear audience was down massively.
Yeah.
And CK and I were debating, and the number we put was 500K, and it ended up 431,000 people watched MLS Cup. Now, that's obviously not a great number. Of course, streaming, Apple TV, whatever. But what's the league stance on a number for the biggest game of the season that didn't have a great viewing audience, according to Sports Business Journal?
Yeah, and look, it's disappointing, right? It's 50% less than MLS Cup was on Fox the year before. I think what kind of gets lost in some of these top-line conversations is we don't know how many people were able to watch on Apple on top of that. And obviously now we are 2 years into training people to go to Apple for MLS. I believe the previous Cup had almost 2 million viewers on Apple on top of that Fox number. So, it is a disappointing linear number, but I would imagine 2.5 million people probably watched streaming on Apple last Saturday. So that would lead you to say, okay, we have a break-even audience between English, Spanish, Apple, and linear. So, look, the Apple thing's a hard thing, right? Because the production quality is great. I think it's really cool that Alex Katranas and Matt Crooks and Chicho's families all over the world, they can watch their games live. But, we have fewer households that watch us in the state of Utah than we did when we had a 3-hour infomercial on KMYU. And the hard thing with, I think, the Apple deal financially, it's a $2.5 billion deal for this league, and teams benefit from that. But having it behind not only an Apple TV Plus paywall, but then an MLS season pass paywall on top of that, it makes it hard for casual fans to find your product. And that's something that certainly Messi has helped with during his year plus in MLS and in the Apple ecosystem. And there were Board of Governor meetings yesterday and today back in New York where the owners and the presidents and the CBOs are all getting together trying to figure out, okay, how do we keep growing this thing? How do we take advantage of Messi? How do we get ready for the World Cup here in North America in 2026?
Is there a place where I can go to reference this 2 to 2.5 million viewers on Apple? Is there a reference point where
No.
okay. Oh.
They don't release data.
Well, okay, so let's see. 70 million people watched MLS Cup on Apple TV. If that's they don't release data. How are we supposed to analyze anything?
Well, it's for your protection, Spence. You don't want the FBI getting into your Apple stuff.
But if there's no reference point, we can just make up whatever number?
I agree with you. It's quite a conundrum.
No, it's more than a conundrum. It's straight up dishonest. It is intellectual dishonesty. And I will not stand for this, Gerald.
I applaud you in your efforts and your commitment to the bit.
Oh, making MLS great again, the Trey Fitzgerald story, just making up numbers on the fly. Goodness gracious. All right, for real, how has the Apple television situation, you referenced the local stuff, and RSL was one of RSL, I mean, I give you a lot of guff, but RSL, mostly thanks to you, Trey, was able to carve out a local broadcast footprint that actually did pull good numbers locally. But I believe what I read when the release, and I guess now, whatever, let's just make it up, was like 4 or 5 local teams really benefited. RSL was one of them. From a league-wide standpoint, what are the returns after a couple of seasons with the partnership with Apple, and do you think it's just the new normal period moving forward?
Yeah, I think we were probably one of the 4 or 5 teams that were really hurt locally by that deal. But you have to, MLS is up to 30 teams now with San Diego coming in next year. And with the way the media models have broken and are breaking, especially regional sports networks, there were several MLS teams that really had nowhere to put their games I think the last non-Apple year, while we were enjoying the success that we were on KMYU, Dallas and DC United are putting streams on their website, and so when you think about it from a global standpoint, if you're only, league, how leagues look at these things, and if you're only as strong as your weakest link, you had to do something. Now, there are people, especially with these Fox numbers coming out over the last 5-6 days, there are people that are saying, okay, it was a smart idea for MLS to bet on Apple, the most innovative, internet company in the world, but did they commit themselves to that model too early? Because we're kind of in this purgatory, and now you see like what Ryan Smith is doing with the Jazz and Utah Hockey Club and what the Phoenix Suns are doing. There are a lot of NBA and NHL teams that are now doing what we did for 18 years on free over-the-air TV here with RSL, and everything's a trade-off. We lose sponsor opportunities and partnership opportunities by not having that local television over-the-air or even cable presence, but cable's breaking down. I can't tell you where it's going to go. I do know Apple and MLS have committed to each other for 10 years. So there is a sense that, hey, we're going to grow this thing together. I think the Apple Friday Night Baseball deal has come under, kind of mixed emotions. There are people that really love it. There are people that think it's too limited and it needs to expand more. And I guess if you went to any non-NFL team and looked at their local or regional television deal, 50% are probably really good and 50% are lacking. So I think we're just kind of in this purgatory where journalism has declined, the media ecosystems are changing, but no reliable or beloved model has emerged from all that. So hopefully MLS and Apple can figure it out. I do know that everybody in and around MLS is begging Apple on a daily basis to give us data and analytics and numbers that we can use, 1, to get better, 2, to increase our audience, and 3, to help inform the public and celebrate what on many levels is a great, great partnership.
Well said. Straight out of the playbook. I wouldn't have expected anything less, Trey. Well done. All right. There have been some, I'll just call them minor roster additions. We're gonna try this. Forrester Iago?
Iago? Yeah,
okay.
He's a 23-year-old Ghanaian striker. We get younger there because right now our number 9s are Chicho and Anderson Julio, who are both in their upper 20s, I think 27, 29. So just a flyer, MLS re-entry draft, basically kind of a free agency draft. And I didn't know his name until Kurt told me about it a couple hours ago. So there are Nashville fans that think, while yes, he may be a raw, somewhat youngish player, that they maybe gave up on him a little too early. But you know how it is, Spence. Sometimes it's all situational, and a player can find himself with a certain locker room or a certain coaching staff, and the switch gets flipped and things start to make sense. So, he makes us deeper and younger, and maybe he'll thrive here over the next couple of years.
Moving over to the ever-popular half-day Major League Soccer trade window. What a dumb league, dude. I didn't even know this was a thing. RSL has acquired Tyler Wolff, who is, and Porter, hop on the mic here. Tyler is best known as essentially being Josh Wolff's son. Porter, please remind the audience what the official stance is of the drive on nepotism.
Yeah, nepotism, no patience for it.
Thank you. Yeah, can't win with them. Soft. So ultimately, that's all I know about Tyler Wolff. But RSL acquires him during the half-day Major League Soccer trade window back on December 9th because, of course. Tell me about this young man.
Well, the trade window is mandated by the collective bargaining agreement with the players' union.
Stop it. It's silly, and you know it is.
It is. Tyler Wolff, 21-year-old left back. Again, somebody that makes us younger, somebody that makes us deeper, somebody that played 60 games for Atlanta last few years, including some as a teenager. Also played almost 60 games with Atlanta's kind of Monarchs B team level. So again, somebody that we think is a raw young player. He's too mature to be called a project, but somebody that can make us a little deeper there on the back line, especially on the left side.
Any other potential? It's interesting because I think Elliott and then Kurt obviously taking over for Elliott seems to have put together a pretty young and talented, exciting roster that, if given time, to grow together, probably feels like the best route. You made a lot of summer transfer acquisitions, of course, Diogo and Dominic, and a lot of exciting talent that simply just needs time, I would imagine. But any other potential additions coming up either in the transfer window or the half day, whatever the hell they call it, whenever you're allowed to do it, potentially any other, talent acquisitions on the way?
Yeah, I think Kurt and Tony are working the phones. And to your point, there are several different MLS mechanisms between now and next Friday, which next Friday is like the college draft. There are a couple other like re-entry and free agency mechanisms. Certainly the trade window is now wide open for all the teams. And then you have the international player market with MLS and RSL starting preseason January 11th and getting ready for a February 18th CONCACAF game. I think Kurt is feeling the pressure to try to give Pablo as complete a roster on the ground as he can here in 3 weeks. So like you said, we did a lot of shopping late last summer, especially with Diogo and Dominic, but you do, especially if you're going to make a CONCACAF run and balance CONCACAF on top of Leagues Cup, Open Cup, and the season. You want to be healthy and you want to be deep and you want to be ready. So I would not be surprised at all if we didn't add 4 or 5 more players to our roster in the next couple of weeks. And look, we might have to say goodbye to some guys that we love because you can't always acquire an asset without giving up something either. So it's going to be an interesting time between now and January 10th.
Would one of those players who potentially could be on their way to something different be Moon Boy? Oh, excuse me, Moon Man. After the growth this year, what's the latest on the potential departure of Diego?
Yeah, Diego Luna, 2024 MLS Young Player of the Year. I think, look, there are rumors of European teams kicking the tires on Diego. It's funny the way the world works now because it's like we are exploring the possibility of potentially making a call, but we haven't made a call yet. Look, if somebody, made us an offer we couldn't refuse, I'm sure we would go to Diego and say, hey, do you want to go do this? And if he said yes, we would make the sale, similar to what we did with Andres. But right now, all expectations are that Diego will be here for the 2025 season, especially the first half. And he's got an opportunity, maybe if he gets called into the U.S. national team January camp with Pochettino and does well there and then does well in CONCACAF and has a good first half of the season, then I'm sure there'll be a lot more people looking at him next summer with much bigger wallets.
All right, before I set you loose, I'm noticing that you tweeted at me earlier because I'm never on this dumb thing. What did Dunny have to say? Did I catch some? Did I catch some strays from Dunny today that I'm not aware of?
It's the standard when Dunny talks about his post-playing career and how he got into media. He takes liberties with how poorly you and I were doing the pregame show, and how he basically says, if you guys want somebody that knows what they're talking about, you should just throw me on the mic. And that's ultimately what it happened. But I think he enjoys taking shots at us and, all the things we've tried to do to grow soccer in this great beehive state.
Oh, so you're saying Dunny, per usual, his whimsical, I'm the hero of my own drama memory, yet is always inaccurate, is reflecting once again. Did he happen in this article to talk about how I badly petitioned to get him on that show, or did he leave that part out?
No, he left that part out.
Oh, yeah, shocking. Good old Dunny. Whimsy. Yeah, fun, yet inaccurate.
The road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I guess 17 billion people watched MLS Cup on Apple, too. So what's real anyway? All right, Trey. Good chatting, buddy. Let's get a golf trip on the calendar, okay?
Let's do it. Thanks, Spence.
All right, there he is, Trey Fitzgerald, little RSL. A lot of RSL news kind of comes and goes when we're pretty football and basketball centric, so I figured we'd do a little RSL on the program today. All right, coming up on the other side, the hippest NBA rider around, Howard Beck. We're back to some college football with Chris Camerani later on. Dave McMiniman joins us too. Busy show on a Friday. Keep it right here on ESPN 700. All right, who did the hippest NBA writer decide to select today? Because we're going 80s on the program. Who do you go with?
A little whisper to a scream. I'm actually not really familiar with this one.
Yeah, but
we had it.
That's Howard's thing. You're not supposed to be familiar. If you're familiar, he's failed as the hippest NBA writer out there.
This is fair.
Mission accomplished, Howard Beck, on a Friday. Happy Friday, sir. How are you?
Doing great. Great song. Porter, how do you not know this song? You're not that young.
See, this is what the hipsters do. Now you feel like an idiot.
What
don't you?
year? What year is it from, Howard?
Late 80s.
Okay. I was born in 95.
I just checked it out. 1984. You were born in 95.
94, sorry. So.
Oh, no, but this just never came on like one of those stations that was like hits of the 70s, 80s, and 90s, or like one of those like you didn't have. I don't know. I don't know what to say.
I'm sure I've heard it somewhere, but yeah, it didn't register when you sent it.
I consider it. So you gave me like 30 seconds to come up with an 80s song immediately off the top of my head, which is fine. Like I'm capable. This is why Spencer dubs me the hippest NBA writer. And I went to this immediately because, one, it's a great song, but two, I feel like there are certain songs that are like the ultimate representation of their era. And I think like this is like the ultimate 80s alternative song. This is the ultimate like new wave song. It's just like, it's simple. It's basic. It's got a great hook. It just sounds like the 80s. It's awesome.
Fair enough. I like it because it's appropriate for our theme.
It's also got the added bonus of the parenthetical. The song's actually called "Birds Fly," and then parentheses is "Whisper to a Scream." I don't know why. It's a ridiculous construction grammatically as a writer. But "Whisper to a Scream," phenomenal song.
Perfect. And on brand for Howard Beck.
There we go.
You guys good or am I? Can I?
Yeah, I don't want to do radio today. Remember?
Yeah. Porter, what's the name of the radio show?
The Drive with some Checketts.
Can I hang out with you guys now? You guys good? Okay. All right. I tease, I kid. All good, Howard. All good. On a Friday afternoon. All right. Your favorite topic, right off the top. Nobody's watching NBA basketball. Your favorite topic, Howard, right off the top, because for whatever reason, folks want to talk about it, and it is undeniable that we do have a sample size that isn't just 2 or 3 weeks. You know, we're now the holiday season. Care to enlighten us as to why folks who once upon a time did not watch NBA basketball have tuned out so far this year?
I haven't seen whatever the latest data is on this. So I'm just going to take your word for it that the ratings are continuing to be depressed. But there's two things here always with this discussion. One is there's a lot of eye of the beholder stuff, right? Like there's no like Gallup poll for what people are watching and why. We have Nielsen ratings, which don't tell us anything except what people actually turned on. And even then it's only in Nielsen households. So ratings are imperfect, but they're also lacking context. And so what happens is people start to superimpose whatever their particular perspective is. So if you're somebody who loves the NBA and you can't stand the idea that people aren't watching, you immediately resort to, well, they just signed like multiple national TV deals over the next 10 years that are going to be, tripling their revenue. So who cares about ratings? Obviously, it's really valuable. Obviously, enough people are watching because they're going to make tens of billions of dollars in national broadcast rights. If you are somebody who is critical of the league for any reason, some people will take it from a political perspective. For instance, where 4 years ago it was, go woke, go broke, and people aren't watching. Well, there was a blip. It was the middle of a pandemic. The season was delayed and all that stuff, and they rebounded. They came right back. It had nothing to do with, or very little to do with, whatever the league was doing in terms of its progressive activism at the time. And that stuff is not present now anymore because the moment passed and everybody went back to their usual routines. And so you can't blame it on that particular thing now. So then it becomes, well, what about the state of the game? Is this about load management? Is this about stars not playing often enough? Is this about too many threes? Is it about the style of the game? Is it about the fact that the league's preeminent stars are now in their twilights, Durant and LeBron and Steph Curry, Kawhi doesn't even play anymore, but the guys who accounted for most of the championships of the last, 10 plus years are not the ones ruling the league right now. And maybe the new stars, this generation aren't, for whatever reason, as compelling. Jokic is not somebody who's generating a lot of ratings for whatever reason, even though he's one of the greatest players we've ever seen. And Luka doesn't quite generate that level of interest as a Steph or LeBron. We're always doing that thing where we're looking for the next guy. When Jordan's in his prime, it's next Jordan. And then right now it's, who's going to replace LeBron and Steph as faces of the league. And you could throw Durant into that conversation too. And I just don't know that we have it right now. No one has really emerged because it's always more than just the greatness of your game. It's about how compelling you are as a figure. And there's an incredible amount of talent in the NBA right now. I don't know if there are enough players driving interest, which at some point in this conversation we might talk about the NBA Cup with the semifinals tomorrow, and the final four teams do not involve or include LeBron James, Steph Curry, or Kevin Durant. And I am very curious to see how that affects interest in the two games tomorrow and the championship on Tuesday, because last year they had the benefit of LeBron. So I don't know. There may be all kinds of things. I mean, you tell me, Spence, do you think there's any reason in terms of the quality of the product that would cause the game to the ratings to dip now? Because I don't think the game is fundamentally different now than it was a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. The 3-point revolution, everything else we can talk about, has all been present for several years already.
Well, and the 3-point revolution was brought into really the consciousness of basketball fans from Stephen Curry, who still continues to draw ratings when he's on television. So I don't necessarily buy the whole, every team just runs down and shoots a lot of threes. I do think there's a little bit of, and it's a copycat league. It always has been. I do think there's a little bit of are these teams really playing all that differently? Or is it just kind of the same style where teams are hunting 3-point shots? Now teams do it differently, but I'm sure that your typical NBA fan doesn't watch and believe that some nuanced Celtic approach is different than some Warrior approach, because they're all at the end of the day shooting threes. And I think your average fan only watches the ball and watches the shot that's taken. But I will tell you this, Howard, in my opinion, and I'm a radio host in Salt Lake City. Tom Haberstroh did the data last year that we suffer more than any other market from load management. Superstar players not showing up to play here. And we're all in our own echo chamber. I have a 23-year-old son, and he and his friends very much watch college and pro football because they don't know if their favorite star player is going to show up to play in Salt Lake City or show up to play on some random night. And look, load management isn't new. Star players sitting out isn't new, but I do feel like it's as bad as it ever has been. And there's also at times, and when I'm watching a regular season game, not all of them, but some of them, the players look like they could, be very interested in doing other things. They're not necessarily playing with urgency. And sometimes it feels a little all-star game-ish. And as a viewer, if you don't care, I don't care. So I do think there is something to be said for the biggest and best players in this league sometimes not showing up to play basketball, even when they're healthy. I think that's a fair thing to talk about.
It's fair to talk about, but it's a hard thing to assess, right? The league, when it instituted, let's talk about load management for a moment. They started the PPP, the player participation policy. I hate all these acronyms. Last year, and they felt like the first season of that policy, combined with the 65-game rule to be eligible for postseason awards, those things had a positive impact, and I think the data supported that. So we're in year 2 of that. Why did that work last year, but it's not now? And are stars really load managing any more in the first 2 months of this season than they did last season? I don't think that's the case. Steph has played except for when he's been hurt, and LeBron's played except for when he's been hurt. And the one guy who's been missing is Kawhi Leonard, but I don't know that anybody actually cares that much. Joel Embiid has knee problems, and the Sixers have truth problems because they won't actually say what's actually going on. So the lack of transparency in that instance is the bigger problem. Just level with fans about what's going on with your star player's knee and his health. But I don't know that we have a uptick in load management or anything going on right now. So again, if ratings are down and especially year over year, I don't know that there's anything unique to the last 2 months compared to a year ago at this time. So to me, it is kind of a mystery.
Let me follow up about LeBron because something doesn't taste right here. Something doesn't smell right here. I don't know if it's like they're not in the cup and so he's just going to bounce, but he's taking a personal leave of absence, an excused leave of absence. I know he's got the foot thing or whatever, but is there something that we're not saying out loud because it's LeBron about this whole thing?
I have no idea. As you may know through Porter, we spent the last week in Europe on a quick family vacation because my daughter had been studying abroad, and we went to go pick her up and spend some time there. So I did keep social media on, and I saw that LeBron was initially listed as like he's out for personal reasons, but then it became, I think by today, it was about his foot. So I don't know which thing it is. So like, again, if teams would just tell the truth a little more often, we could avoid some of these awkward conversations. I don't know if he's injured, if he's got something else going on. I have no idea.
All right, moving on. You referenced the Emirates Cup. Let's take care of the sponsor. As a soccer guy, I get it. So we got the semis with the Hawks and the Bucks, Rockets and the Thunder. We're in year 2 of this thing. Do you feel like, I guess, people that you talk to league-wide, do you feel like, I know they're all behind the endeavor, but do you feel like it's gaining traction and accomplishing the things that they wanted to accomplish?
We talk about echo chambers, as you mentioned a minute ago. Being in your market, there's you hear a lot more of the complaints or insights of friends and people in the Jazz market. My echo chamber is NBA social media, primarily Blue Sky now and not the other place. But in either case, you have a lot of NBA enthusiasts, both in the media and fans, bloggers, whoever. And I feel like a lot of people are heavily invested in the idea that this thing is cool and should work, and it's new and it's fun. And that includes a lot of my peers, and it includes many, if not most of, if maybe all of my Ringer colleagues. I am a lone wolf on this as a skeptic / agnostic. I'm not sold on it. I don't feel like it has any great gravitas as an event. And maybe that's unfair to say of something that is only in its second year of existence. But the echo chamber is that, no, the people I hear from all the time are other people who are really heavily invested in the NBA, and they seem very rah-rah about it. I don't quite understand it. It only matters if the fans like it. That's the thing. And the people have gotten mad at me for some of my analysis of it. And I said, listen, that doesn't matter. Like, I have my opinion, and I'm paid to express my opinion. But at the end of the day, my opinion is the least important thing here. If the players and teams are into it and therefore go after it with everything they've got, and then the fans follow suit because they care because the players care, well, then it's a success. And it doesn't matter whatever I say. But I feel like as an event, with a cup attached to it, a championship attached to it, I think the end result of it just feels hollow. What does it mean to win the cup? Nobody can answer that question. This is the thing that drives me crazy. What does it mean to win? Because we know what it means to win the Larry O'Brien Trophy, and that is an unfair standard, I admit. But I know what the emotional investment of fans and players, teams, cities is when it's the playoffs, the real playoffs. I know what that means historically. When somebody is crowned the Cup champion on Tuesday night, and immediately afterward, we're just going to go right back to trade rumors and who's injured and who's possibly getting fired and who's in the real race for the championship and eventually MVP and all these other things. We're going to completely forget about this. And 10 years from now, we will always talk about who won the June championship. I don't think we'll ever talk about who won the December Cup because who cares? It doesn't mean anything. That's the problem I have with it. It's a kind of an existential question. What does this all mean? I don't know that it means anything. That said, if both games tomorrow in Vegas, the 2 semifinal games, if they're well attended, if the crowds are energized, if the players are energized, and if the same holds true on Tuesday night for the championship game, and if the ratings are there, then the league can consider it a success, and everybody will march on and pat themselves on the back. Which is fine. Like, I don't have any problem with it. I just don't see what the allure is myself, other than it does give us a little bit of something new to talk about in the early part of the NBA season.
And to your point, maybe it would be different if the Jazz were involved, but I feel like it's just crickets around here. Speaking of the teams that are left, look, it's still early, but when do we start talking about the Rockets a little differently? Look, I know if Neutral Milk Hotel was an NBA player, it'd be Alfred Şengün, so I know that's your guy. But when do we truly start talking about them as a team that might have something to say about this thing?
I did not see Neutral Milk Hotel entering this conversation, so kudos to you.
Thank you, sir.
There's a play on something there, because if you look up the schedule for tomorrow, these games are being played at quote unquote neutral site. So neutral site Milk Hotel, I don't know. The Rockets, the Arrow Rockets over the sea,
like it.
Very deep cut. No, and your whole audience just tuned out. I apologize. The Rockets are really, 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 really good, and they're really young in a lot of places, and they have not had this level of success until just now, basically. Yes, Şengün is awesome. He's great. Jalen Green, Jabari Smith, there's just a bunch of fun young talent there. Thompson, and then a couple of vets, Van Vliet in particular. It just works. They play their butts off. Ime Udoka has, I think, infused them with the same kind of grit that he did with the Celtics when he was there. And they're a really fun story, and they're actually a really fun team to watch, especially if you like a team that just really gets after it defensively. I don't know that it's certainly too early to talk about them as legitimate contenders, even though the standings are what they are, right? They're 17-8, and they're looking great. I think the thing about them that I will consider suspect right up until we get to the playoffs is they don't really have that one guy to say this is who makes us go, right? They have a lot of good players, and a few players who might make an all-star team at some point, or a few all-star teams. And again, Şengün, Jalen Green, but none of these. They don't have a top 10, top 12 guy. There's not even an obvious all-star on their roster. They may not have an all-star this season for all we know. And that's fine. They're going to win with an ensemble approach, but history tells us that you usually need a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander or a Nikola Jokic or a Luka Doncic or Giannis, whoever. And that's not who they are right now. And so because of that, I'm going to look at them with a little bit of suspicion, but that's not even a knock. That's just more of history tells us this is how you win a championship. They're just really, really good, and they're young, and they're just getting going. And, the one thing I will say about the Cup is for a team like Houston, much like Indiana last year, these are the first high-stakes games that some teams will play in. And, again, I can say that the stakes are not that high, but it's all psychological. You put meaning on the game, and you add a few dollars, and you say there's this Cup you can play for. For a young team that hasn't been in playoff games yet, that's a great test, and it's a nice place for some of these young players to prove themselves.
I do have a couple of Jazz questions real quick, but before we get there, I asked you early in the season if, the conversation about how deep the league is going to be made a moot point by the Celtics, and I still feel like it is Boston and everybody else. And out here in the West, there's a lot of good teams, of course, a lot of talent. And when everybody's healthy, we'll see what it looks like come spring. But is there a chance that Oklahoma City, they played the Jazz the other night, and the Jazz are young and they're not good. They're lazy. They turn the ball over. But Oklahoma City defensively is a nightmare. They are ball hawks. It looks like a bunch of NFL safeties playing pro basketball. Is there a chance that this could simply be OKC out west and Boston out east?
It's been the obvious pick, for the championship ever since preseason, right? I think, with all due respect to the Mavericks, as defending Western Conference champions, and all due respect to everybody else in the West who have good teams, I think the consensus has been Oklahoma and Boston were the class of their conferences from starting over the summer. And nothing that has happened this season so far, I think, would dissuade anybody from that. And again, all respect to the Cavaliers, who have been fantastic, but I think in a best-of-7 series, everyone would be picking Boston. And I think in a best-of-7 series, Oklahoma versus anybody in the West, people are going to be picking the Thunder, but there's a lot of season left. By the way, the Thunder have done this 19-5, best record in the West, despite the fact that Isaiah Hartenstein, one of their biggest signings of the offseason, missed for the first month of the season, and then Chet Holmgren has been out for the last few weeks and is going to be out for a while longer. They're just so deep and just so good. Somebody might knock them off, Spence. It's possible, but as things stand right now, I'd be shocked if we weren't looking at the Thunder winning the West.
All right, couple Jazz things, then we'll let you go. And look, you're good enough to join us every week, so I'm not going to ask you about Walker Kessler's growth every week or whether we're worried about Keontae every week. I'm not going to do that every week because that's exhausting for me, and I know it's exhausting for you. But here's the question I'll pose. In all your years covering NBA basketball, I don't want to age you, but you've been doing this a very, very, very long time, and I've read you for a number of – before I was in this business, I read what you wrote. So you've seen teams in the spot the Jazz are in. And there's no other way to spin it. They are bad. It's a bad product. They're lazy. They don't get back on defense. They're the worst defensive team in the league. They turn the ball over more than any other team in the league. They allow points off turnovers in a way no other team in the league does it. They almost lead the league in turnovers per game by nearly 2 turnovers. So when you look at some of these young players, it's clear that there hasn't been a ton of rapid growth. In your experience, when a roster is full of young players and a coaching staff and a front office is trying to understand what they have, what are some of the dynamics that young players have that even when it doesn't look great early on, they eventually settle in and become NBA rotational pieces? Because honestly, Howard, as of today, if you ask me who is going to be here when the Jazz are good again, I would tell you it's Lowry and I would tell you it's Walker, and then I have no idea. So what are some of the dynamics that do allow young players to at some point figure out NBA basketball?
Whew, man, that is a tough one to unpack. I'll go a step further, though. By the time the Jazz are relevant again, it might be none of these guys because Lowry is 27. When you're in your late 20s and you're the best player on a team that has no clear route to relevance in the near term, and I hate to keep going back to this, and I know he can't be traded this season, but eventually that's your way out, most likely. Whoever you're drafting high next spring is probably not going to mature in time. I mean, maybe. Look, you a couple of years later, guys take 2-3 years sometimes to really blossom if they're going to be a star. Maybe that guy plus Lowry at age 30, maybe. But I don't know that that's the case. What often happens is in a case like this, where you're in a transition period, where you haven't picked a clear direction, where you've been satisfied to just kind of overachieve and compete when nobody expected you to, but you don't want to do the complete teardown yet, and you've been reluctant to trade Markkanen, you end up in this in-between space. And what happens then is you have a lot of players on this roster who individually you look at and go, I understand everything you just said about turnovers and laziness and bad transition D, all true. But sometimes it's just the collection they're just dragging each other down. And also because no one is good enough to carry the day in, day out, you end up with everybody trying to do either a little too much or being a little deflated by circumstance. It wears on you after a while. And so now you're not getting the best version of each of these guys. You're getting, maybe not the worst version, but a diminished version. And the second you take a Sexton or a Clarkson or somebody and you put them on, a top 4 team somewhere else via trade, they're going to look like a rejuvenated player. They're going to look much more valuable again because there's a lot of rotation guys who just need to be in the right rotation and not in one where you've got, 7, 8, 9 guys who are all equally good / flawed and not good enough to do, to carry you, to produce wins on a consistent basis. So I don't know if that answers the question, Spence, but that's what I got.
Yeah, no, there's good stuff in there. And it look, man, you know the deal. It's just we're in Salt Lake, so you have to cover the Jazz, and it's hard to cover a team when you ultimately know what time it is and what they're trying to do. It's just a fan base that's used to like precision and ball movement and teams that are at least competitive. And so I think it's hard for fans around here to deal with this. We've never won a championship, but more often than not, we have really good basketball in Salt Lake City.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. Like that, your fan base there has been, had the benefit of, luxury of, you could say, spoiled by, a lot of teams and a lot of eras of high competence and high competitiveness, and as you say, precision is a great word to use there. And but every team's going to have to go through this at some point. It's hard to sustain without having a tear down occasionally or taking a bunch of steps back. And this is their time to go through it. And eventually, Danny Ainge and Justin Zanuck are going to make some bigger moves. I'm fairly certain of that. Obviously, there's another high pick coming, and that's a long way off. And there's a lot of season left to play, and it's hard if you're a fan to be excited about the payoff in June when you've got 60 games left. But that's where they are.
Yes, sir. No other way around it. Howard, thanks for the time, my friend. Have a great weekend, okay?
Appreciate it, Spence. You too.
Howard Beck from The Ringer, formerly of the New York Times, formerly of the Bleacher Report, formerly of Sports Illustrated, formerly of the LA Daily News. My man's been doing it at a high level for a long time. At Howard Beck on social media is where you find him. I want to tell you about my friends at Prize Picks. Right now, it's a brand new format where you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. You can run your game all season long on Prize Picks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app, so definitely check them out. You can make the holidays bigger and brighter with Prize Picks, the best place to get real money sports action while watching your favorite sports. Again, you can win up to 1,000 times your money. Prize Picks now offers MasterCard for quick and easy deposits into your account this sports season. Join now because this holiday season, Prize Picks is giving away 2 free picks in December, and they're giving away $30+ million in rewards during Picksmas. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700 to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700 to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game all season long. 2 hours down, 2 hours to go. More coming up next right here on ESPN 700. All right, special thanks to Howard Beck for stopping by. So I just realized something during the break because I always refer to Howard Beck as the hippest NBA media member, the hippest NBA writer.
Right.
Is there a chance that Dave McMenamin is the coolest NBA media member?
Howard, I think, is definitely the hip guy.
He's the hipster.
He's the hipster.
He's the Brooklyn hipster.
Probably wearing a beanie, even though it's
lattes,
not needing it.
matcha lattes. But Dave is like L.A. He might be the coolest NBA media guy.
He might have taken that mantle. He's the most famous.
Oh, for sure. Dave McMenamin, celebrity reporter on a Friday. Hello, Dave. How are you?
I'm doing well, but I would willingly try to grab for that mantle that you're suggesting I possibly could fit. But isn't it kind of like being the all-time home runs leader in the minor leagues? Like, I don't know if, like, being cool amongst NBA beat writers is that much of an accomplishment.
Well, fair enough, because when I referred to Howard as the hippest NBA beat writer, he pushed back as well. And I reminded him, like I'll remind you, you are up against a bunch of nerds. So it's not like there's a massive. But you might be. Here's the question, though. Who's the toughest? Like, if you all got in a room, who's walking out of that room?
Like you're suggesting like a fist fight?
Yeah. Like, you all go in a room, who's walking out of the NBA writers? Not Windhorse.
Wow. I've never considered this. I'll give respect to one of the OGs, Brad Turner, of the LA Times, longtime Clippers and Lakers writer, currently covering the Clippers for them. He is a bad man, and he has friends who can take care of business he's ever messed with. So he's not someone I'd want to cross. Our
guy, Ben McMahon, probably can throw some punches. Timmy Goodtime Bontemps is tall, but he seems like he doesn't know how to fight. I'm going to have to think about this one. I like it. All right, Dave, you are not traveling with the Lakers, so are you with LeBron?
Yeah, I was lucky to find some service down in Cabo to take this call. LeBron, yeah, a margarita, double, please. Okay, yeah, sorry. So once we're done here, we're going to go back, enjoy the sunset, and watch the game on satellite feed. But yeah, I mean, that's how we're spending our Friday night.
Gotta love it. What's going on? What's the deal? Is it they're not in the cup and he wants to chill? I mean, the reports are everything from a excused personal absence to a foot issue. You're the guy for this. What's going on with LeBron?
So it is both of those things. There is a foot issue that started to affect him late in that 4-game road trip that they had last week. And also, he has an excused absence to get treatment on the foot, but also, this is like a reset. And came into the season with the goal of playing in all 82 games. That went out the window when he missed the Portland game. And then it was, of course, the Lakers competitive group, they would have loved to have the opportunity to make $500,000 in one night in Las Vegas and do what they did last year at the NBA Cup. That did not occur. The NBA provides the teams that don't make it this kind of unique break in the schedule. And LeBron and the decision makers of the organization got together and said, this is a good time for you to do what you got to do to get right mentally and physically to be able to, push through the next 60 games that are to come. And so the schedule provides him a chance to get 8 days of rest while only missing 2 games. And so far, the Lakers are 1-0 in those 2 games. And so, I think so long as the next time we see him on the court, which could be as soon as Sunday, he looks better. This was a pretty prudent decision by everyone involved.
Do you feel like people around the league, because the Jazz also, of course, are out of the Cup. I know that's shocking to folks that have been watching Jazz basketball, but they're going to play tonight, but they more or less have been off all week. Does it feel like teams around the league who are not in the finals coming up in Vegas this next week, do you think they like this respite early in the season to kind of reset, as you put it?
Oh yeah, I mean, I've talked to several people around the league that said that exactly to me. Now, I mean, it doesn't mean that a team like the Atlanta Hawks, who at the start of the NBA Cup said their team goal as a young group was to get to Vegas, that they're lamenting that they're there right now. Or even I think Doc Rivers and his staff would say, man, this Cup finally these cup games kind of woke our team up, and now we are in a much better place than we were at the start of cup competition. I don't think they're going to be regretting it, but the teams that didn't make it, you're not going to hear them complaining about this kind of quirk in the schedule, because it's allowed teams to get healthy. It's allowed a team like the Lakers, they had basically 8 road games in a row, because they did come back to LA, but they were for 2 single games. And so it was 8 different cities that they played in consecutively before this little break here. So it allows, the NBA doesn't have a bye week, right? And the NFL, that's such a part of not just the physical chance for teams to rest, but kind of mentally refresh, get away a little bit, plan something away from the court for your family or friends, all those types of things. The NBA doesn't have that other than All-Star Weekend. And so this gives teams a chance to have that a little bit, and I think it's a good thing.
So we've been talking about this all week. The Jazz played OKC last week, and, of course, the Jazz are bad at basketball. But every time I hone in on OKC, it feels to me that even though there are a ton of really good teams in the West, we may be dealing with an OKC Celtics final, full health assumed, of course, and obviously that could change. But defensively, Dave, I used this analogy with Howard today. It's like a bunch of football safeties. They're ball hawks. Everybody pays attention to the brilliance of SGA and their offensive flow with Mark Dagnall, but defensively, they are impossible to break down. So I know the narrative has been the West is deep, and it is, but could we have a elite team out here that maybe people aren't talking about the way that most people talk about the Celtics?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think, at this stage of the year, you're just trying to see who's going to be separating themselves, and I think that fits the category.
And they've been doing it, without full health. And so all that leads me to this. And again, we're just not even to Christmas yet, but how many teams do you feel like have legitimately separated themselves in the West where you feel comfortable saying they can actually win the thing?
OKC really impressed me when they played in LA a couple weeks ago. They're really physical. Their defensive numbers, it's no wonder that they rank so high, not only in transition defense because they have these young athletes being able to get back, but in the half court, they're really physical. They're really good at switching, and they have guys, that they can plug and play, where if a guy gets in foul trouble or a guy needs a blow and is tired, you got another, kind of ravenous guy ready to ball hawk for another 6-minute stretch before you need another sub. And even though they are young and, usually I am of the belief that a team needs to take their lumps before you're going to say they're really going to get there. They're going to be really tough out. And Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is, and this is wild to say because Nikola Jokic's numbers are insane, and maybe I will be a bit of a victim of voter fatigue here if I continue to have this opinion. But Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, I have a hard time seeing someone who means more to their team right now. I think he's the MVP of the league because everything that he does is translating to them, winning so many games right now.
So, I mean, it leads us to teams like Memphis, Dallas, who won it a year ago, Golden State, the Clips with Kawhi, Denver because their on-court numbers with Jokic are insane. I mean, how many teams are you willing to put in that tier that can actually win the West right now?
Yeah, listen, Dallas just made it to the finals last year, so I'm not going to discount them, especially Luka's. He's so good. Now, I think they've regressed a bit, losing a guy like Derrick Jones Jr., who was so important to their defense, but they're starting to look a little bit more like the team we saw last spring. The Wolves, I think they're going to regret the Karl Anthony Towns deal. I get it. Financially, it was a decision they felt they had to make because they couldn't have all these guys in a voided second apron, and they couldn't find a trade partner for Rudy Gobert. So I get it from the business sense, but I don't think they're going to be as tough of an out. Houston, I think, again, I put them in the kind of too young category. And, I don't know. The Clippers have looked really plucky so far. I was just at their practice earlier this week. Kawhi Leonard is finally back on the court, participating in group activities for the first time since March. They're not going to rush him back, but he could be back before the new year. And if Kawhi looks like the guy who played 68 games last year and averaged 24, 7, and 7 with high efficiency numbers, I don't discount them, even though they were kind of written off after they didn't re-sign Paul George. I think they could make some noise. Ty Lue's as good of a tactician as there is in the game. So it's still kind of open in the West. But OKC is the team I think that separated themselves a little bit, especially because there's something like 11-2 over the last 13, and that's without Chet Holmgren. And at some point, they anticipate getting Chet back.
Two-part question here. It seems like every time I open up some sort of NBA whatever, the rumor of with Jimmy Butler's out there, and so much so that we have a list of preferred teams. But it's not like Miami is horrible this year. Look, they're not Boston. They're probably not Cleveland. New York, maybe we throw the Magic in there, although Franz Wagner is out for a minute. But two-part question. Why would the Heat trade Jimmy, and how do you think this thing plays out?
Jimmy's 35 years old, if I'm not mistaken. He already has $52 million coming to him next year. He wants an extension in that range, and he's someone that has not been reliable enough in the regular season. Obviously, he's led that team to 2 finals appearances and an additional Eastern Conference Finals appearance. So he's done well. He has been, he's not a Mount Rushmore member of the Heat organization, but he's on their all-time roster, whether it's in the first 5 or off the bench. But this is kind of the Heat way. Like, they're not going to kind of marry themselves to someone for sentimental reasons. That's the reason why Dwayne Wade ended up with the Chicago Bulls and didn't come back to the Heat until he was, basically part of a deal with the Cavs. But they had a number they weren't going to give to Dwayne Wade. And certainly that's the same mentality they have with Jimmy Butler. So again, it's more of a business sense type of move. And I understand it. And quite frankly, they could set themselves up because, if you're Miami, you're a perpetual market to attract whomever the guy is, right? So you want to be limber enough when that guy becomes available. And, 5-6 years ago on draft night, that guy was Jimmy Butler. And he's given his best years to the franchise. And now they're going to reset. And I certainly anticipate him to be moved prior to February 8th.
All right, Dave, a couple other topics, then we're going to set you loose. And I acknowledge that this is probably not super comfortable for somebody who works for ESPN, and we are your affiliate in this market. But ultimately, it's a topic that is complex because I don't think there's one reductive statement to make, but there are data points available that indicate there are a lot of people that have turned NBA basketball off this year for whatever reason. And there are a lot of them that we could get into. We discussed this last segment with Howard. We come at it in Salt Lake City through the prism of a piece that was written by Tom Haberstroh, and Tom did a really good job to indicate that the 2 markets who suffer most from superstars either not showing up or not playing when they get here are Salt Lake and Denver. Maybe that's a time zone thing. Maybe it's I don't want to be cold in February thing. But that's something we run into here. It's an interesting dichotomy in our market, Dave, because our local TV ratings, like when Mitchell, Gobert, Quinn Snyder, when that group was really going, our local TV ratings were second only to Golden State, but we were down as far as the national stuff goes in the 20s. So a lot of people watch Jazz basketball here, and not a ton of people watch NBA basketball here. But you're the guy for this. Why do you think a lot of people seem to be turning off pro basketball this year, according to the numbers?
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I think there's layered reasons here, and some of it, of course, is just the habits of folks and the cord cutting and the idea of the younger generation being so plugged into their phones where they are still very much consumers of the NBA. but they don't watch a game. They watch the highlights and memes and discussion and tweets and Instagram posts that come out of the game, and that's the way they consider themselves plugged in as a fan. That's not the worst thing for the NBA, and certainly we should mention that at the same time this is occurring, and of course, obviously, this will be a concern for the company I work for and any television partner that the NBA has moving forward. But the attendance numbers are still quite good. I think actually, I believe last year they set an all-time attendance record for the most amount of people who actually paid for a ticket and sat their butt in a seat to watch a live game. So it doesn't mean that the popularity of the league is falling off the cliff. But clearly, there is a problem with getting people to tune in to games. And some of that, obviously, the regular season has been very long. At one point, a major problem was load management. And so the league addressed that by, fining teams if they violate the policy. Then the kind of anecdotal evidence was, if you're a general sports fan, you don't think the NBA season starts until Christmas Day. You're not paying attention until kind of football's over. So the NBA said, okay, we're going to create this NBA Cup in-season tournament that occurs in the first third of the season prior to Christmas Day as a carrot to get people to watch. At least the league is recognizing that they got to do something. Last season, the amount of fouls that were called dramatically dipped from the All-Star game forward because the anecdotal evidence the league was finding out was that games in the 140 to 150 range just aren't that appealing to viewers that are accustomed to seeing the competition involve a little bit of defense. And so, I think the league's got to keep making attempts to fix this, because obviously you're a basketball guy, I'm a basketball guy. Like, there's an intrinsic appreciation we have for these athletes and what the game is. There's got to be a way to convey that to the general public, and the league's going to keep trying. Now, one thing I will say, and I'm sure Howard talked about this, I'm pretty sure I've read him write about this several times, is that the homogenization of the style of play offensively is certainly hurting the game. It's because it's hurting my interest in the game. The Daryl Morey-ification of we're only going to go for layups, dunks, free throws, and threes. It's a boring product. And, we need another Phil Jackson and Tex Winter to come through with a more appealing offense. And it's a copycat league. And that, so long as it has success, teams will try it. And I think more people will be interested.
Octagon UFC rules, Dave McMenamin, Howard Beck. Who wins?
Howard's just he's a small guy. He's a little guy. So I don't know if we'd want to get in the same ring.
Okay, fair enough. Last thing. On Sunday, 87% of the league is now eligible to be traded. We talked about the Butler thing. Anything else kind of out there permeating that is of interest with players that, like the Pelicans, have to do something, but what do you think we could see coming up after Sunday when most of the league is eligible to be moved now?
Yeah, Brandon Ingram's in a very similar situation to Jimmy Butler. New Orleans has given no indication that they're going to be willing to kind of re-sign him. And so if he gets moved, then it's kind of like, are you going to just join into the capture the flag sweepstakes, which I don't, apparently they already are. I don't think this was the intention of David Griffin or anyone involved, especially considering the way Zion played in that play-in tournament game against the Lakers last year, 40 points, and New Orleans was one of the tougher teams when healthy last year, but they just haven't been healthy this year. And so if you move Ingram, well, then all bets are off with Zion, and then you talk about guys like Herb Jones, who they could probably get a valuable first-round pick for. And then they completely reset what they're doing down there. So that's a team to keep an eye on. Then there's the buyers. Certainly Golden State, considering where they are with Steph Curry's career, Phoenix, where they are with Kevin Durant's career. The Lakers, you think Rob Pelinka will feel compelled to make some sort of move. They're but all three of those teams are going to be kind of fighting for the same type of pieces out there. So there's going to be movement, and I anticipate there'll be movement. I mean, maybe not starting right at the buzzer on Sunday when December 15th comes and all these contracts become eligible, but I don't think it's going to be, we're going to wait for everything to come in February. There's enough teams out there that are going to feel the impetus to get the ball rolling early. So, buckle up. We're going to see some movement.
Dave, thank you, my friend. Appreciate it on a Friday. Have a great weekend, okay?
Yes, sir. Thanks, Beth.
All right, the great Dave McMenamin covers the NBA for ESPN. He's on their daily NBA show. He's also on social media at MC10 is where you find him. Brought to you today by our good friends at Advanced Window Products. Nate Orchard, Jake Weber, best dudes, was out there this week hanging out with them. #1 rated window company in Utah. And they're locally owned. Their sales and installation are all in-house, which means you avoid that middleman markup. You actually save a grip of money with them for a number of reasons. Lifetime warranty, glass parts, all included. You can save energy with all their rebates, offering a great special this week. They've got financing available. You can save now and pay later. You get $2,500 off when you purchase 10 windows or more. So beat the rush and order today from the factory to your front door in 8 weeks or less. Give them a call at 801-850-9100. That's 801-850-9100. And visit them online at advancedwindows.com. Our good friends at Advanced Window Products. All right, Chris Comrade, some college football coming up next. Latest with the Utes, latest with the Cougars, latest with the big picture college basketball stuff with CK. Before we launch into the 5 o'clock hour of the program on a Friday, right here on ESPN 700. this Jackson Brown? CK choose little Jackson Brown?
He did indeed.
At least I knew it. Most of Chris's selections go by me. Christopher Camerani on a Friday. This was it was on a soundtrack and it's escaping me. Help me. Which soundtrack? I know
Fast
you know.
Times.
Yes. Fast Times. Somebody's Baby, Jackson Brown. Well played, CK. We're doing a little 80s on a Friday. Any inspiration or you just like the song / the movie?
Well, it's 80s Day on the Drive, and I would highly recommend the Yacht Rock documentary that is now.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I am a yacht rocker, which might be a little bit of a surprise to you, but very chill, entertaining background music. I would say it's a couple steps ahead of elevator music, but it's not music that you necessarily have to be emotionally involved with. That being said, it's tremendous. It's very good. I would recommend it to anybody who likes music.
Okay, I'll watch it because it's on HBO Max. I've seen it a couple of times. Is that, did Bill Simmons do that? Did I see it was
correct?
Okay,
correct. Yep, yeah, and they got lots of big players, man. And you know, this yacht rock thing just kind of percolated within the last, I would say, like 5 to 6 years. It's always kind of been like the Christopher Cross, Jackson Brown, Doobie Brothers, Michael McDonald, like. It's been around, but it didn't really necessarily have a name to fall under. And it's cool, man. It's enjoyable. I think like if you're like into the cultural zeitgeist of things, it's a very enjoyable watch.
I'll have to check it out. Definitely. Have you seen The Agency, the new show on Paramount, Showtime?
I have not.
Highly recommended because I need to recommend something to you that you haven't seen for all of the stuff that you've recommended to me. So I'll definitely check out Yacht Rock. All right, CK, I have a random question right off the top because I want you just to guess.
Hit me.
There is a dating service called Wallet Hub, and they have, for the past year, gone through the data to rank cities for singles 1 through 160 in America. Where do you think Salt Lake ranks?
Ooh. I think you're trying to trick me. I'm going to say Salt Lake's in the top 15.
Number 35, right behind Las Cruces, New Mexico, and ahead of Missoula, Montana.
I've never been to Las Cruces. I've heard great things. Love Missoula. But, I mean, 35 is not that bad, is it? Or are we operating under the assumption and the stereotype that everybody here is already in a relationship / married? Is that why we're so low in theory?
I guess. I don't really know what the data is. I should probably look into that. But it just it popped up on social media. So I'm sending it to all my single friends to see what they have to say. Anyway, nobody cares. Moving on. Since you and I last spoke, I believe, yes, that's right. Coach Witt is coming back. Year 21 for Kyle Whittingham. As I tend to do, Christopher, I'll give you the credit for calling this a while back. I don't know how much of your reasoning you want to bring on air, but when I off air floated the possibility of this being Kyle's last season, you summarily dismissed it. Why is that?
That's a good question, because even now, in the wake of all the change that the program has undergone in like the last 10 days, I'm honestly shocked that Kyle is coming back to do it again this way. This is just conjecture on my part, so nobody should take this as any sort of reporting. I just think Kyle is a creature of habit, and his favorite thing to do is to coach football, and he makes a lot of money doing it. He is the chairman and CEO of Utah football. You could make an argument of Utah athletics. You know, he is the highest paid public employee in the state of Utah. He holds a tremendous amount of power and sway at that university. And, you know, even though he said at that last presser before the UCF game that you can't really ever time perfectly, you know, the exit, I just don't think Kyle could stomach going out on the longest losing streak that the program had since the year I was born, you know, 38 years ago. I just don't think that that's part of his DNA. So that being said, I am stunned, to be honest with you, that he is taking part in this massive undertaking that has to see his program basically start from scratch on one side of the ball and deal with a bunch of yes, no's, and maybes in the transfer portal. But I mean, I think Kyle does his best work, and I think he enjoys it the most when he gets to prove people wrong. And I think going into next year, if we're projecting, I think a lot of people will be very skeptical of Utah's, stance in the Big 12. I guarantee you they won't be a top 4 pick next year. And, I think Kyle likes that. So we'll see.
Shout out John Paul. There's a little Kendall Roy, Logan Roy thing going on here. Do you think there's any anxiety at all from Morgan to start his tenure? I mean, he's still very young. People forget that Morgan's very young. I think he's 43, 44, thereabouts. So it's not like, he's got decades left if he wants it, but do you think there's any hey, it's my turn, Dad?
The eldest boy?
Indeed.
I don't think so, just because I don't think we will see Kyle coach into his 70s. I didn't think we would see Kyle to coach until when he's 65. He proved me wrong. So, but I think the fact that Morgan and Kyle were in lockstep together on the offensive coordinator position hiring, I would assume that Morgan has a lot of say in what style of offense they want to deploy. And that was a reason why they went after the types of targets that they did. And I do think Kyle and Morgan are giving Jason Beck carte blanche, so to speak, to come in and make the offense his own, as they should. I think for too long at Utah, it was always kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out, new guy with old guys. No, it's been so bad the last couple of years that clearly change needed to happen. And we're going to see, starting next fall, what Jason Beck has up his sleeve.
And since you and I last spoke, that is the hire, so let's hone in on it. According to reports, the third option, I suppose, as far as people reporting on the process, and they do land on Jason, and he brings his quarterback with him, Devin Dampier, who, according to ESPN's rankings, was a 7th-ranked transfer quarterback available in the portal, so that's not nothing. Wonder what that NIL number looks like, but what do you make of the start of what will be a completely revamped offensive side of the football?
Yeah, I haven't dove into any tape yet. I'll be sure to do that in the coming months to try to accurately break down the offensive schemes and the dynamic approach of the University of New Mexico Lobos last year under Jason Beck. Rest assured, listeners of The Drive, and rest assured, Spence and Porter, we'll get there, I promise.
I know you
will. Looking back at it, I know people really wanted the likes of Ben Arbuckle and Mac Leftwich, but these are 2 air raid offensive guys, and the air raid I don't know if it coincides with the style and culture of Utah football. Air raid teams generally are trying to beat you 50-35 or 60-42. I still think Utah's kind of the bedrock of Utah football is defense, controlling the clock, being a dynamic offensive team on the ground. And, I think Jason Beck, by all accounts, is more of a natural fit if we want to believe that the air raid isn't more of a natural fit to coincide with Morgan Scalley and Kyle Whittingham's defense. So, everybody that's much smarter than me, especially locally, guys that have played college football and in the NFL, say that this is the right hire. I listened to Mike Sanford Jr. on your show earlier this week, who was really good, by the way. I thought he had, a lot of interesting, insightful things to say about Jason and his offense. So getting Devin Dampier here obviously was, I don't want to say part of a package deal, but it was kind of a no-brainer, especially considering while we haven't heard where Cam Rising stands, I think most people believe that he won't be back at Utah. So you're talking about an entirely new quarterback room starting from scratch, and it would behoove Jason Beck to get the guy that he, got to orchestrate a very fun, tantalizing offense last year. That being said, I know Utah fans are very excited about the idea and the possibility of a true dual threat quarterback. I know he accumulated 30-something total touchdowns last year, rushed for almost 20. He did throw, he was 12 for 12 in 12 interceptions, 12 touchdowns passing last year. It's not great. Like, I think Isaac Wilson had almost similar numbers. So I think people should pump the brakes in terms of, let's see who Utah can put around him. Let's see what type of running back room is around him. And who's he going to throw the ball to, Spence? Like, I know we've beaten this horse dead over and over and over again for years, but I think the wide receiver room is almost as empty as the quarterback room. So I know that there is, anticipation and excitement for potentially a lot of upside with this new offense and with Devin Dampier, but you're talking about a mobile quarterback. And listen, what has Utah gone through the last couple of years? They're going to get Devin Dampier to come in and start games. I think you can make an argument that you're only as good as your backup quarterback in college football. We're about to find that out with Georgia in the playoff with Carson Beck out. Like, the deal is not done. Jason Beck and his staff have to go out and figure out who is going to be able to back up Devin Dampier, because if you have a true dual threat quarterback, the odds of a dual threat quarterback like Devin lasting an entire year without getting banged up is very, very minimal.
If your surname is Gunnar Stockton, don't you have to be an awesome quarterback or an awesome point guard? I mean, you have two paths in life if that's your name, yes?
Well, I think I got it. Does it end on AR or ER? Is it Gunnar or is it Gunner? Like, I think that there's a distinction there that we have to figure out.
The announcers were saying Gunnar Stockton.
Yeah, it's ER. So Gunnar would be more of like a Nordic approach. Gunner is, seems way more in line with a young man born to be a quarterback in the town of Tiger, Georgia. So, it's a great football name. It's an SEC name, and the Dogs are going to see how far Mr. Gunner can take him.
What are you setting your son up if you name him Leo and he lives in Salt Lake? What are the career paths there?
Future left back at RSL. I mean,
oh man,
he's a lefty. He likes to stand in people's way when you're trying to get around him. He's always going to be goal side. So, the obvious goal is to get him into the academy and get him to the first team eventually.
Let's get that done now. Well, just so you know, I learned that like last week MLS opened like half trade day.
Oh,
that's.
Did you not know about the re-entry draft, Spence?
I know about the re-entry, but the half trade day thing is the perfect MLS. It's so dumb.
Oh, I mean, it's among the dumb things that MLS does. Its off season is among the dumbest.
It's a dumb league, man.
I'm telling you, like, if the league could find a way to even carve out a semblance of room for off-season intrigue and drama. I know the world soccer market is nothing like our domestic leagues here, but the reason why our domestic leagues here take off is because, like I said on the show last week when I was in the studio, like, people are more interested in the off-season more often than not than they are in the season itself, because people are so attached to their smartphones and their laptops and their social media. They're waiting for the next tweet. They're waiting for there's no longer Woj bombs, but they're waiting for something from Adam Schefter or Jeff Passan or like Diana Rossini. They just want something new to kind of satiate their appetite for what could be. And you can tie that to the need for MLS, but I think that's a huge reason why, tangentially, I think that's a huge reason why college football is taking off at the level as it is now, because with the portal, basically any minute of any day, your team could either lose its best player or gain potentially its best player.
Well, and also MLS, they're liars. I don't know if you heard Trey earlier, but you and I were debating how many people would watch MLS Cup, and we settled on 500,000. The linear number was 430,000. And when I asked Trey about the number, he said, well, 2.5 million watched on Apple. And I said, can I have the reference? He said, no. So we might as well say 1 billion people watched MLS Cup on Apple TV. They're liars, the lot of them.
Brutal. I mean, I know the teams weren't that intriguing from a, national, international point of view. Congrats to the Galaxy, but man, can you imagine like what those numbers would have been if it was like Miami and LAFC or Miami and Seattle even? Like, It's hard, man. Like the more that this league grows, the more it kind of defeats its own purpose, like, so to speak. And I know that doesn't make a lot of sense, but like while you're growing, you're also kind of dwindling your potential reach. And I know the Apple TV deal has been somewhat successful, but again, like you're not going to get casual fans to not only sign up for Apple TV Plus, but then pay extra for MLS. You're just not going to.
Then you can just lie and say 2.5 million people watched with no reference point. It's just ridiculous. Anyway, away from that, I wanted to get, so we had our guy Gordon Monson live in studio this week, and Gordon said a sentence that people have said, including myself. And the sentence was, Kyle Whittingham has earned the right to tell us when he's done. Has he?
I think so. And it's hard not to be overreacting to what you see on social media, because that is obviously not real life. But it is fascinating to see a fan base get so up in arms regarding the state of a program that has had 3 down years in 20 under Kyle. And like, you can make the argument that while 2024 was flummoxing for a number of reasons, it was that because of the tremendous amount of injuries they once again had at their most important position. Like in 2013, 2014, when they went 5-7, like they were like not a talented team. They had good defensive players, but they were, nowhere near the cream of the crop of the Pac-12. They eventually got there, 5 or 6 years later. But it is wild to see people say, like, it's Kyle's time to go, it's Morgan's time. Like, I'm just of the opinion that, like, until you have data that it's not working for several seasons in a row, it just doesn't make sense to want to, move away from it. Like, if we're dividing 17 by 20, Spence, what is that? Come on, you're the math major. That's like 93% success rate, meaning you're getting to a bowl at minimum 93% of the time. Kyle Whittingham has been your head coach. Are you kidding me? Like, but again, I think this is also a byproduct, and Kyle's almost a victim of his own success that he's cultivated here, is that the expectations here are so high that when they're not met, when you're not smelling roses, when you're not getting a first round playoff game or even a bye, people think that change needs to happen. And I'm just not of that opinion yet. And like I said, if we eventually get data, like if Utah cannot figure itself out in 2025 and 2026, we can have a conversation. But until then, I think it's low-hanging fruit to say that Utah needs to make a coaching change because they've had one bad year. Did we talk about last year, Spence? They went 8-4 with a bunch of dudes that like nobody's really heard of from anymore. Like, that's insane. And last year was the best year that the Pac-12 ever had. So I understand that people were frustrated about the injuries. I get it. But like, everybody needs to put the Twitter down, go listen to some Kenny G, Christmas music, and take it easy.
Not Kenny G. I mean,
yes, Kenny G.
No, not Kenny G. Christmas music. There's so many good Christmas albums out there. You can't land on Kenny G. Do you
background music, Spence, background music.
The only other person I know that likes Kenny G is my father. You listen to Kenny G?
Bro.
Wow.
If I have something in common with Big Dave, then that makes me feel very accomplished.
That's fair, but don't make me run down the catalog of his other Christmas likes because it's depressing riding in the car with the man. But moving on. Look, let me remind you of a quote that you may have forgotten, Christopher, about Coach Witt. You either die a hero or
you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
And to your point, I don't know how many of these are young Utah fans, millennial Utah fans, go vape and stream on Twitch or whatever you do. But there are a lot of people that I've been surprised. And every time I say this, I have to remind folks, so I'll say into this microphone, my opinion is that Kyle has earned the right to tell us when he's done. And I'm old enough to remember what Utah football was like before Coach Mack and before Urban and before Kyle. And to your point, 2 years ago was a phenomenal coaching job. And the year before that, they were in the freaking Rose Bowl. But I wonder, when it comes to the power brokers, the people that are writing checks for Utah football, and there is an arms race going on in collegiate athletics locally and nationally, and there is a feel in the community that the arms race right now is being won by the school about 40 miles down south that appears to have some very powerful basketball people writing checks for very excellent, exciting young basketball prodigies, and the football team had a better year than the team up here at the University of Utah. So I wonder if you're Taylor Randall and Mark Harlan and you have to listen to the voices of the people that are writing checks, are they on board with Kyle continuing, or are they kind of pining for a bit of a change? And I honestly don't know the answer.
I mean, this would be a great segment for Reality Check. I mean, I'm just saying, like, we could go on for a couple hours about this and
Sure.
really dive into it, but
Sure.
we have 6 minutes. BYU has a billionaire backer who is bankrolling its basketball team, and in this era, you can. And I know that, Cougar fans are doing backflips that they got AJ DeBanza, but the reality is AJ will be there 1 year, and if they don't win the national title, it's cool that he was there a year, but then he's going to move on and probably be the number 1 overall pick in that next year's draft. Football, however, is always going to be the ultimate driver of interests, the health of the athletic department, whatever school you're at, for the most part. And I just don't know, like, if we're talking about big-time Utah donors, or the Garfs, or the Eccleses, or whomever, or the Huntsmans, are they saying, like, yes, we need to get this defensive coordinator who's never been a head coach before in there because with his experience or lack thereof, he's going to change things overnight? I just don't see it, man. Like, it doesn't make sense. I can understand that there is a little bit of frustration considering that this year Utah was supposed to be in the playoff finally. They are, quote unquote, original BCS busters, whatever. But like, Utah has in theory, the easiest transition from legendary head coach to next head coach. You're not going to have to go out and hire a search firm and try to vet who could come to Utah and understand the quirks and the ins and outs, and the fact that a third of the roster is going to be, white, a third is going to be black, a third is going to be Polynesian. That will all continue under Morgan because Utah is an interesting place and they figured out how to make it work. And that's why Utah has been so good for such a long time. But I just, for the life of me, don't understand why people think that getting rid of a guy who built what you pay for, what you watch, what gets you excited, after one bad year, I don't understand why people are ready to get their pitchforks out and are frustrated that he's still in charge. Again, let's rely on data. And so far, the data has told us that in his 20 years, they've been bowl eligible 93% of the time. They've won 2 conference championships. They've gone undefeated. They beat Alabama. What else do you want? And again, I think honestly, Spence, it's just a victim of, we've talked about this ad nauseum. Sports fans in this state, spoiled beyond belief, whether you're a college fan or a pro fan. Jazz fans are finally experiencing what it's like to tank in the NBA, and they hate it. College fans, whether you're BYU, Utah, whatever, they've had it good for the last 50 years, off and on. It just doesn't happen like this in other small places. So people are spoiled, and this is how they react when things don't go their way.
Timothy Chalamet, thumbs up or thumbs down?
Listen, man, stunned at the game day, appearance. Props to the ultimate hipster. Doesn't do it for me, but apparently he's a huge Knicks fan and is a secretive super sports fan, which I didn't see coming. So from an acting point of view, he's kind of a one-trick pony in my mind. I want to see the Dylan movie for sure, but props to him for getting on game day and basically showing out. I don't know if he ended up going undefeated on his picks, but he was impressive.
All right, before I set you loose, well done, by the way. I was trying to catch you off guard, but you're a sneaky cat. All right, before I set you loose, I do want you to chime in on this because you referenced AJ DeBanza signing with Brigham Young. BYU has 2 potential lottery picks on the roster this year. The Yegor Deming kid might be a top 5 pick. They have two top 30 recruits, including AJ next year, and then the Burgess kid, I think, is 123. It's a top 10 recruiting class. And, you see a lot of people drawing a straight line between Ryan Smith, owner of the Utah Jazz, and Ryan Smith bankrolling the BYU basketball program, regardless of what he tweets, by the way. And it doesn't work like that. There's not a straight line between if a team has the pick ahead of the Jazz and they want to take AJ, they're going to take him. So this is not a farm system, but are there benefits that the Jazz and, their ownership group can reap a little bit as a result of BYU being right now the epicenter of college basketball attention?
I don't think so. I just think the ping pong balls bounce the way they do. And it would be a bridge too far for me to put those two things together. I think they're two separate things. Now, it does help that the Jazz are bad and that there are going to be more talented players in these future drafts, regardless of where they go to school. But you just have to have the ping pong balls fall your way. And historically, the Jazz haven't. So if that means next year they get Cooper Flagg and finally get the number 1 overall pick, I'm sure Jazz fans will be pissed that they won't get the number 1 pick the following year and get BYU Cougar legend AJ Dubance. I think it's just asking a little too much to try to put those two pieces together. But fascinated to see what happens at BYU. I mean, they put together a very talented roster, and we'll see how they do. They just happen to play in the best basketball conference in the country, so we'll see.
Christopher, thank you, sir. Have an excellent weekend. We'll chat soon.
My man.
The great Chris Camarati, senior staff writer at The Athletic. You can get the links to all of his work. Well, kind of. He doesn't tweet anymore. He's the best sports writer locally and nationally. He's one of the best. So appreciate Chris's time every single week. We're going to launch into the 5 o'clock hour of the program coming up on the other side on a Friday right here on ESPN 700. All right, what's going on? It is Drive at 5 time. Your commute home on a Friday afternoon starts right now. Happy Friday to you. Happy weekend to you. We started the day off with a big-time snowstorm here in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah. Those of us up on the benches up there had to shovel quite a bit. Then by 2 o'clock, it was sunny, and it has settled into a very nice night, very nice Friday night. If you're driving around town, maybe running some holiday errands or making your commute home on a Friday, or maybe you're heading on downtown to the Delta Center to see the Jazz take on the Phoenix Suns. Happy Friday to you, and we appreciate you making us a part of your day. The 5 o'clock hour of the program tonight is brought to you by Orem Toyota. Brent Brown Toyota is now Orem Toyota for over 2 decades. Brent Brown has been a trusted name in Utah County. As Orem Toyota, this legacy continues with a renewed commitment to customer-centered service and active community engagement. Everyone is invited to experience the same dependable service now with a fresh new approach that ensures that you, their valued customer, will lead the way. All inventory is priced below market value. Everything must go. Once-in-a-lifetime clearance event going on until the end of the year. They have expanded inventory. They have enhanced service department. Personalized customer experience from start to finish. The focus is on your needs, preferences, and convenience. The all-new Orem Toyota is located at 1400 Sand Hill Road in Orem and online at oremtoyota.com. All right, little Jazz Suns tonight. Of course, Jazz have been off for quite some time. The Suns are a 7.5-point favorite. They're 12-11. The injury report actually does not indicate whether or not Kevin Durant is going to play, and that should mean he is going to play. The Utah Jazz, as far as their injury report is concerned, the injury list is pretty long. Larry Markkinen, as of now, is questionable, as is Jordan Clarkson. Of course, Taylor's out, but the only player on the Suns injury report is Colin Gillespie, and he's listed as out. So maybe you're in for a treat. Maybe Santa Claus has brought you, I should say, a pro basketball team that actually showed up in Salt Lake with their stars. Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, hopefully they're going to play for the Jazz, as this is kind of the game that's the night that's being played by teams that aren't in the NBA Cup. The NBA Cup continues tomorrow with some semifinal action. If you're into such things, the data tells us that you're very much not. So the bulk of the show today has been either a little NBA basketball, a lot of college and pro football week 15. Got rolling last night with a bit of a dud, but ultimately good old school football. Saw the Rams take care of the Niners. The Niners, for all intents and purposes, might be out of the thing after being one of the preseason favorites to win the Super Bowl. 12-6, kind of a baseball score. But the Rams are getting the moniker in pro football as that team you just don't want to play come playoff time. So week 15, a bevy of good games coming up over the weekend in pro football, namely the Bills and the Lions from Ford Field in Detroit. Detroit's a 2.5-point favorite. Should be a good one on Fox in the afternoon slate with the Steelers and the Eagles. Philly's getting 5 on the hook there. It's a 43.5 over-under. Packers-Seahawks is your Sunday night game from Lumen Field in Seattle. So a lot of pro football coming your way coming up this weekend. So say that again. Oh, gotcha. Never mind. A lot of pro football coming your way this weekend. Don't forget, stay tuned on the station tomorrow. Here's our rundown for a Saturday ESPN 700 slate. Utah Golf Radio, our guy Paul Pugmire, of course, Jan Brownstein. Army versus Navy football. Utah men's basketball is going to take on Radford. Then it's Utah women's basketball against UW. So stay tuned for that over the course of the weekend. So not a lot of news today. Not a lot of new news today as far as Utah football adding talent. But since we last spoke, there have been a couple of additions to the coaching staff. Micah Simon will roll in to coach the wide receivers. Mark Atuaya will roll in to coach the running backs. So Utah football still kind of finalizing their staff on the offensive side of the ball. Both those gentlemen know Jason Beck very well. And now we kind of await to hear what the news is on some of the players in the transfer portal, whether or not players in the portal will be coming back, acquisition of new talent. It is a roster that needs a lot of filling out. And not a lot of new news on the Utah football front in that endeavor as we speak today. But the coaching staff taking shape, and we'll see. We've been talking, of course, today on the show about some of the areas that the team needs to fill and what it's going to look like next year. Unfortunately, even though there's a 12-team CFP, and even though there's a bowl season with some fun action, namely BYU Colorado, I think that should be a good one. most of the news right now for Utah football is people trying to understand what they're going to look like next season and whether or not last year was a moment in time, an aberration, or whether or not, this is who Utah football is now. So as the news kind of comes spilling in, we will bring that to you as it pertains to Utah football, adding some talent here or there. But today has been somewhat quiet on the college football front. I did see Jack Bomeister has landed in Texas. The Utah punter is going to be a Longhorn, so pretty exciting news there. Porter, any update on Cam? Any update on Cameron Calhoun? I mean, this was a situation that caught most people off guard. Tweets out, Utah man am I. And then just a matter of hours later, tweets out that he's entered the transfer portal. A bunch of offers come spilling in. I have not seen anything official as of now. Have you seen anything?
Nothing official. And yeah, Cam is still kind of weighing his options. I've seen him posting on social media. I don't know if he's teasing Utah fans or just very much courting the opportunity to maybe come back and stay at Utah. But this is a situation, Spence, that is a little different than, say Mekhi Bernard last year, where Mekhi was looking for greener pastures, went and visited with Colorado, and ultimately decided to come back to Utah. And it wasn't necessarily like a contract standoff thing. This is very much different. This situation is much more akin to the chaos of college football that we're talking about this year, where Cam Calhoun announced that he was coming back to Utah. He posted a Utah man am I, whatever, a week ago. And in the meantime, since that post, he has gotten offers from at least 7 Power 4 programs. So that's the thing that we're dealing with here, Spence. And yeah, Utah will have an opportunity to match, to maybe bring him back in. But I've already heard that they haven't matched certain offers. So I don't know exactly where that means the Utes stand with one Cam Calhoun. But it's tough, man, because you see a lot of these kids. Now, Cam's not one of them. He's going to find a landing spot in my estimation, be really productive. But he's one of the lucky ones because he's got a lot of film. He's really good. He's coming from a P5 program, P4 program. But man, there's, depending on who you ask, 20 to 30% of these kids that are entering the portal today, Spence, they're never going to play organized football again. That's a real stat that we're seeing over the last couple of years. And while Cam's not one of them, he's very much playing that system to his advantage to get every last penny he can.
Speaking of a Cam, there's also no official news on Cameron Rising. We all kind of sit back and wait for that. I have been told that Utah football would very much like Isaac Wilson back to compete with Devin Dampier under center for that starting job. And if Cam decides that it's a really interesting thing because Kyle Whittingham, every time he's been asked about Cam, dating back to Cam's injury, when it became apparent that there was the option to come back for the 8th year, Coach Witt said that's going to be up to him. And all you can do is take people off their word. I mean, look, the fact of the matter is whenever there's a coach or a front office executive or a player addressing the media, you rarely get the actual truth. So what does it look like behind closed doors if Cam Rising knocks on Coach Witt's door and says, I've decided to come back for year 8? I don't know. It would add some intrigue for sure. I'm sure Cam has some options that are not the University of Utah. We've seen what it looks like when he's fully healthy. The problem is it's been so long. He's played in, 2 of the past 25 games or something for Utah football. So no official news there. I have to wonder whether or not Devin Dampier and that announcement that Jason is bringing his quarterback from New Mexico simply scares other quarterbacks away because the clear message is he's going to be the starter. So we'll see. We'll see as we roll along the offseason. I mean, the great thing about college football and the chaos of where they find themselves is from a content standpoint, it does bring a lot of very interesting pieces of news. Namely, this week, Bill Belichick taking over as the head coach there at North Carolina, and whether or not there will be copycat situations. He's bringing Mike Lombardi with him to be the general manager of the program. And, that's a different thing. Like Andrew Luck was hired as the GM of Stanford football. Andrew Luck has never done that before. He's a smart guy. I'm sure he's going to figure it out and do just fine. But Lombardi's been an exec in pro football, and now he's the GM of North Carolina, while the greatest head coach by any measurable metric in pro football is now going to the collegiate ranks. And that has to indicate a sea change where college programs are going to lean into the pro model. So that's an interesting takeaway this week, and it ties here locally because BYU basketball has already done that. And over 2 recruiting classes now this year and the one that's coming in next year, it's shown to be very, very popular. So there you go.
Fox was playing on a Friday afternoon before we say goodnight to our listeners. It was
It's you asked for 8, so you weren't getting through. You were not getting through a show without me playing a little testing. Mostly for my late fuck, my late
shout out. shout out to Porter's Money Pop. If this is his jam, that's all good. The ladies' music on the program today. There are some good NBA games tonight. The NBA Cup is in tomorrow, so the teams that are not the top guys and the that's nice to have that stuff. Some of the nice stuff in the house.
We've got a little Lakers Timberwolves, but LeBron is all right, man. You know what? You're a LeBron guy. You are. Are you going to hold firm, even though he's clearly ditching his team this week?
Hold firm how? Like, what is your question?
What's going on with him?
I mean,
there's something up.
There clearly is something going on, but I mean, the stuff from Dave for me is enough, right? I mean, the guy's got a foot injury. He's also kind of balancing, right, being available now versus being available in the spring. And when you're 40 years old, Spence, he's going to be 40 in 2 weeks, I think. You gotta measure those things. You gotta weigh those things. You look at the last couple of years, and they've been kind of limping into the postseason. So for me, regular season, looking at LeBron, looking at LA, I just don't care. Especially after the NBA Cup, especially after the 82 game thing was out of the way. Distractions, whatever they are, on and off the floor, deal with those and come back and hopefully February, March, that team will be ready to go. I'm on board. I mean, I watch every game that guy plays. But yeah, it's a little odd right now, whatever's going on.
You know who's not a big fan of LeBron? I don't know if you noticed this. Stephon Marbury.
Oh, really?
Has a lot to say. Yeah, he can't, respect to Steph, Nick Legend, Coney Island. He is accusing LeBron of some very nefarious behavior.
Oh, he's on the I saw that MMA guy. Gosh, what's his name? Covington, who is just the worst.
The MAGA MMA guy?
Yeah, he's like going with the P. Diddy thing. Like LeBron went to a P. Diddy party, so there's a bunch of connections there. But, I mean, that's just a whole other conversation. Yeah. That could be a whole podcast if you wanted to get into it.
I very much don't.
You sure?
I'll leave the P. Diddy stuff to
You want me to effort some guests?
Effort P. Diddy. Look, if you can book him, I'll interview him. I'll ask him the questions.
Why not?
All right.
That's what you come here for.
All right. For P. Diddy interviews, hopefully people don't come here for that. Busy Saturday on the station tomorrow and busy weekend ahead in pro football. Cannot wait for week 15 in the NFL. So hope you guys have a great weekend. Stay safe out there. Porter, what comes our way on a Monday edition of the radio show?
On a Monday edition of The Drive, of course, we'll recap the weekend that was, talk a little college football, talk a little hoops. Bill Riley, the voice of the Utes, will stop by the program, recapping the hirings and all of the latest in Utes land. Tom Haberstroh for your NBA Daily Assist. We'll catch up with Yogi Roth heading into college football playoff week. And hopefully, I guess not the newest Denver Bronco, but the newest re-signed under an extension, Garrett Bowles. Hoping to drop by the program as the afternoon closes out as well.
There you go. Yeah, congratulations to our guy, Garrett Bowles. 4 more years in Denver, about $42 million guaranteed cash, so thrilled for him. That'll do it for the show on a Friday. Special thank you today to Kyle Bonagura, as well as Trey Fitzgerald, Dave McMiniman, Howard Beck, and Chris Comrani. There's a lot of stuff there. There's college football, there's NFL, there's RSL, there's NBA, there's jazz. If you missed any of it, you can check it out over the weekend when you have more time. On the website is ESPN700sports.com. Our station app is the ESPN 700 app, available in the App Store or the Google Play Store. Then finally, for what we do in our space, Afternoon Drive, 4 hours of content for you. It's up on our podcast page whenever you want it. It is called The Drive with Spence Checketts. That's available wherever you get your shows. Subscribe, rate, review, say nice things, give us all the stars. It helps. He's Porter. I'm Spence saying it.